Chapter 1578. Qingyu was a bit tempted. Although it was said that one didn't need to worry about having too many debts, the truth was that he didn't have much confidence in himself. Moreover, Misty had mentioned that he had to pay back his debts several times. It was more like a warning. For instance, just now, the meaning was obvious. To be able to clear away half the debt in one go was certainly tempting. But the more tempting it was, the more it proved that the little person in this mass of clear water possessed an astonishing value. Thinking for a moment, Qingyu slowly said, "Can you tell me the specific uses of the Joss Flame Boy?" Misty nodded. "Of course. It is still yours." She glanced at Qingyu. "Before, didn't you have thoughts of intercepting a portion of the Western Desolate's Joss Flame power? You weren't able to do it before, and even if you thought of a way to do it, it would have been the same as seeking death. But now, with the help of the Incense Boy, it's not too difficult anymore." Qingyu's eyes brightened. By intercepting the Western Desolate's Joss Flame power and accelerating the formation of his divine kingdom, it would eventually increase his own strength. So the Joss Flame Boy could also be used to do something like harming others to benefit oneself. He looked at the mass of clear water in Misty's hands and fell into a dilemma. He hesitated for a moment. Misty didn't urge him. She could only remind him. If Qingyu was smart enough, he should know what to choose. After all, there was an old saying that was extremely true. Treasures were naturally the best, and everyone wanted them. But one had to be alive in order to have the qualifications to enjoy them. Otherwise, no matter how good a treasure was, it would only be an illusion. Qingyu looked up, his eyes brightening. "I can give you the Joss Flame Boy to pay off half the debt. But don't worry, I have a proposal for this. How about you listen?" Misty nodded. Qingyu stood up. He paced back and forth several times and then knocked his forehead. "It's like this. You see, although the Joss Flame Boy tastes good, it would be far too wasteful to directly eat it. How about this? After you take it away, you can rent it to me for a period of time. As for the price, we can discuss it later." Misty looked at him, her eyes strange. She never thought that he would come up with such a refreshing idea. If he paid off the debt and then rented it back, that would be the same as running around in circles without delaying anything. Qingyu felt a bit uncomfortable being stared at by her. He coughed. "I'm just thinking for you. No one will suffer a loss. You're the one who didn't lose out, right?" Little Misty interrupted him. Just as Qingyu thought he would end up like that white jade and be tossed about blindly, little Misty lifted a hand and pointed at the mass of clear water. Ripples spread out on its surface, and a faint black mark appeared within the ripples, vanishing in a flash. "All right, the deal is done. Now that the Incense Boy has stamped it, it belongs to me." She glanced at it and tossed it back. "He's too weak right now. Help me raise him. Little Qingyu, I'm warning you, this thing is no longer yours. If I lose it or he dies, there'll be great trouble." Qingyu received it with both hands. He smiled and nodded. Don't worry. I will definitely help you and serve you well. There won't be any problems." After saying this, he stared at little Misty, his smile becoming even more radiant. "Oomph." With a cold snort, Misty raised her hand. Her 5 fingers lit up, and the image of a jade slip appeared, quickly solidifying, creating something out of nothing. Seeing this, Qinyu's eyes brightened. He wondered just what level of powerhouse this mysterious existence hidden in space-time was at. Emperor Realm? He didn't think so. "This isn't a gift for you. In order to prevent you from making a mistake and causing the Incense Boy to be damaged, I gave you the instructions. This jade slip is a one-time use item, and the contents cannot be divulged to others." After speaking, little Misty turned and left. Just like when she arrived, she vanished with a single step. Qingyu glanced at the ball of clear water in his hand, and his smile became much more sincere. Sometimes when he thought about it, he felt that his luck was truly good. But there was no such thing as a free lunch falling from the sky. Only then could there be a second. Qingyu always felt that there was a reason behind little Misty's current attitude towards him, one that he didn't know. In fact, even little Misty herself wasn't sure what this reason was. He placed the jade slip between his eyebrows. It began to release light, and then, little by little, it became illusory. It was like a lit candle. As it released light, it also burned itself. The jade slip vanished. Chinyu opened his eyes. He already knew how the incense boy stole his incense. But this wasn't easy. It required some precious supplementary materials, and it also required the right time and place. But this didn't matter. The incense boy hadn't fully taken form yet, and this itself required a certain amount of time. He could slowly think of a method. It was just that if he did this, he would have to make some changes to his plans. Before the incense boy took form, he would temporarily stay in the imperial capital. The reason was simple. The Western Wasteland's imperial capital was where the destiny of the nation gathered, and the imperial palace was where all the incense was gathered. If he stayed here, the incense boy would be able to condense faster. Imperial capital, civilian residence. This wasn't a noun, but a specific reference. The family's surname was Civilian. Their ancestors weren't too extravagant, but their luck had been good. Before the Western Wasteland established their capital, they had coincidentally bought half a street. The younger generation also knew how to cherish their blessings and enjoy their blessings. Although there were some ups and downs, they were able to preserve the foundation of their ancestors. Because of their surname, the signboard at the entrance wasn't large. It was gray and unremarkable. One shouldn't reveal their wealth. Since there wasn't a strong person in the family, and there wasn't a backer behind them, the more low-key it was, the better. The young master of the civilian residence had just come of age several years ago. He had a dissolute temperament and liked to wander around brothels. According to the old master, he had spent quite a bit of money to wander around a few streets. He was really a prodigal son. Although the old master scolded him, he didn't stop him. According to the elders in the family, he had been like this when he was young. They were like father and son. However, these few days the young master, Min Xiangtai, was acting a little strange. He didn't leave the residence even once and went to the brothels to have fun. The old master was shocked. He quickly ordered the housekeeper to secretly invite a famous doctor and sneak into Min Xiangtai's courtyard under the cover of the night. Although he was the young master of the manor, he was actually the only son. He had 7 or 8 maidservants. If something were to happen to him, the family's descendants would be cut off. If the family's foundation was destroyed, how would they have the face to meet their ancestors in the future? The young master woke up in the middle of the night. He felt that his father had discovered his secret, and his face instantly turned pale. The old master looked at him and gave him a heavy slap. "You little bastard, I told you long ago that you can play around, but you have to take precautions. Now, you've been infected with all sorts of things. How can you pass down a legacy to this old man in the future?" After being slapped and scolded, Min Xiangtai felt relieved. He glanced at the solemn-looking old butler and the old miracle-working doctor of the medical center, whom he had once accompanied his good friend to meet. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. "Father, I'm not sick. I'm perfectly fine. Why aren't you sleeping in the middle of the night? What are you thinking?" The old master didn't believe that he had failed to coax him, so he had to examine him. Min Xiangtai's face turned red. He glanced at the direction of the study and received another slap. "Don't put on an act. The 2 girls in the study were already taken by you 2 years ago. Do you really think I don't know? I'll turn a blind eye to give you some face. Hurry up and take them off. Don't dawdle, otherwise I'll do it." After some time, the old miracle doctor personally observed and discussed with the old master. After confirming that there was nothing wrong, both sides let out a long sigh of relief. Before the old master could say a few words of blessing from the ancestors, he was driven out by Min Xiangtai, who had pulled up his pants. "Go, go, go. I'm going to sleep." The old master wasn't angry. Instead, he felt relieved. He laughed and thought of the new concubine in the mansion. His heart warmed up. He turned around and left. The housekeeper still had to deal with the aftermath and personally sent him away. Although there was no illness or disaster, he didn't forget to seal a thick bag of medical fees. The old miracle doctor was already experienced. He smiled and accepted it. He turned around and entered the small sedan. In the study room, the 2 maids, who were woken up by the noise, looked at the young master who rushed over. They didn't say anything, but their faces turned red. Their eyes blinked, and they were moist. Min Xiangtai wasn't in the mood to fool around with them. He patiently waved his hand. I was woken up. I can't sleep today. I want to read for a while. You can all go outside and sleep. The maid's eyes were full of resentment, but they didn't dare to say anything. They bowed and left. Min Xiangtai quickly walked to the back of the study table. When he came to the familiar spot in front of the bookshelf, he found that the book that was originally placed there was actually gone. He was so shocked that he broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't bother to wipe it at all. He looked around in panic. At this moment, a light laugh sounded. "Young master, what are you looking for?" Min Xiangtai was overjoyed when he heard this voice. He focused and looked again. The book was actually in its original place. The voice had come from the book. Min Xiangtai tidied his clothes and bowed with cupped hands. Only then did he respectfully take it down and open it on the table. A painting of a beautiful woman appeared in front of him. Now, the beauty in the painting was blinking at him. "Young master, don't hide your illness for fear of treatment. If there's a problem, it's better to treat it as soon as possible." Min Xiangtai's face turned red. He waved his hands. No, I'm very healthy. It's my father who made trouble out of nothing." The beauty laughed. "Silly, I'm just teasing you, my young master." Min Xiangtai let out a long breath. He rubbed his head and smiled brightly. A few days ago, in order to deal with the teacher's inspection, he had pretended to flip through the book and accidentally found this fairy sister. Only then did he know that the saying that there was a beauty in the book was actually true. Although he had only seen her once, the fairy sister's appearance had already captivated him. He no longer had any interest in the common rouge outside. Listening to the charming laughter, Min Xiangtai took a deep breath. He cupped his hands and bowed. "Fairy, the moon is bright tonight. I wonder if you can come out for a chat." The page of the book emitted a cloud of light. When it dissipated, a woman in a long dress appeared. She looked 60 to 70% similar to the person in the painting. However, there was a more alluring aura between her brows than the original. She turned around and looked through the window at the bright moon above her head. She squinted her beautiful eyes. Yes, the moon tonight is really round. Li Qinghao frowned. His eyes were gloomy and his mood was terrible. Although his bloodline had been exiled to this barbaric land of the Western Wasteland, they were still of the same clan. But at the very least, they were of the same clan as the Li clan of the central desolate divine prefecture, and their bloodline was rather close. Coupled with the scheme they had put in place back then, they had been living quite well over the years. Although they had always kept a low profile in accordance with the teachings of their ancestors, they didn't lack the respect and status they deserved. The children of the Li family rarely left Wudong Commandery, but there were few that did. Wherever they went, people would flatter them, and they would succeed in every endeavor. But just as someone from the main family came, there was a problem. A junior of the Li family, who had run away in the name of studying, had left his life lamp in the family broken. According to the words of the person from the ancestral hall, this life lamp should have been broken several days ago. But for some reason, it had only broken apart recently, triggering a warning from the ancestral hall. If this matter was known by the two little ancestors, they would likely look down on this branch of the Li family from Wudong Commandery even more. Before Li Qinghao could send the person from the ancestral hall away to suppress this matter, a voice sounded out in his ears. Where was he killed? The one asking this question was the second miss of the Li family. How could Li Qinghao dare to refuse? He bitterly smiled and told her everything that had happened. Chapter 1579. Li Ruhua remained silent. Li Gu suddenly said, "Guanhai City is one of the 108 main cities of West Wilderness, right?" Li Qinghao nodded. "That's right. It's just as little ancestors said." Li Gu glanced at Li Ruhua, who remained silent at the side. He flicked his finger lightly. A few days ago, a 9-tailed demon fox appeared in the Western Wasteland imperial capital, and a Li family disciple died in Guanhai City. There might be a connection. Li Qinghao felt a bit dizzy. He looked at this Li clan little patriarch who cultivated the sword, and thought, where did this logic come from? Of course, it was fine for him to criticize little ancestor in private. But since it was little ancestor who spoke, he didn't have the guts to question her. He cupped his fists and said that little ancestor was meticulous and extremely quick-witted. Li Ge looked over. How is it? Li Ruhuan nodded. Although he's only a junior of the Wudong Commandery's Li clan, he's the bloodline of my Li clan after all. How can he die without knowing the reason? The two little ancestors insisted on avenging Li Sangzhou, so the Wudong County's Li family naturally had no reason to refuse. After bowing, Li Chenghao quickly left to make arrangements for the following matters. However, after walking for a while, Li Chenghao's expression became calm again. He knew very well how important he was in front of the two little ancestors. Even if he was killed, they probably wouldn't raise their eyes. Revenge for Li Sangzhou seemed like there was more to this than meets the eye. After returning to his residence, Li Ge flicked the scabbard with his finger. With a wung sound, countless tiny sword qi appeared out of thin air and surrounded the two of them. He turned around and said with a frown, "Did you sense that a junior from the Li family of Wudong County was killed?" Li Ruhuan nodded. After a moment of hesitation, she shook her head. "It's a vague feeling, but it's not very accurate. It's like the moon in the mirror. It seems like it could disappear and change at any moment." Li Ji's expression returned to calmness. "Then you really should hurry up. No wonder you were in such a hurry. Even if you try to cover it up, it would be too late." Li Ruhua said, although the Li clan of Wudong County still holds a grudge against them for being banished back then, they are not stupid and know what to do. For now, before we find the barbarian sovereign, we can trust them. Li Ge nodded. "If you say it's believable, then there's no problem." He suddenly chuckled. "A nine-tailed demon fox has actually appeared in the imperial city of the Western Wasteland. After this trip, I might have a chance to take her as my wife. In the future, I can sleep with her every night. That would be great." Li Ruhua glanced at him. Fox demons are also demons. Although the legends say that they are beautiful, as long as they are demons, they will always eat humans. On the bank of the stream, the boulder was like a millstone, its surface smooth and glossy after being washed, without the slightest trace of edges. A scholar was holding a scripture that had been flipped through to the point of being tattered, yet still held on to it. He shook his head from time to time and clicked his tongue from time to time. He was beaming with joy as if the story in the scripture was extremely interesting. All of a sudden, a deep rumble resounded, as if a clap of thunder had exploded in the depths of the earth. At the same time, it was like a giant creature that had been in hibernation for a long time. Now that it had awakened from its slumber, it could flip the world upside down. The meandering stream in front of him instantly turned into a berserk beast. Countless water pillars rushed out from the ground, turning into a river in the blink of an eye. Waves soared to the heavens, sucking in all the boulders on the bank of the stream. Some of the boulders were unstable and were sent tumbling in all directions. The boulder beneath the scholar didn't move in the slightest. After he finished reading the last page of the scripture, he rolled it up and casually placed it at his waist. He stood up and glanced at the turbid waves in front of him. The raging waves of the river rumbled through the heavens. "Stop messing around. What's the use of hiding underwater? Since I've come here, sooner or later you will be struck by my sword. Why don't you come out earlier so that you won't be late? Also, I can leave this place earlier and find a place to eat." The scholar patted his belly. "Look, it's flattened." The river tumbled even more fiercely and the waves howled. The scholar clearly understood. He faintly smiled. "Grievance? Grievance? Our academy doesn't care about such things. A tooth for a tooth, an eye for an eye." "Oh, you say it has nothing to do with you, that you don't even know me." "I know, but so what? All the great demons of the world are one family." Which ancient demon emperor said those words? Although I can't remember clearly, what you said makes sense. Since you're a family, I'll look for since you are one family, then I will find you. The river continued to tumble, but there was no thought coming out. Clearly, the great demon who had been cultivating for so long and had only been waiting for this day to ascend was left speechless, or perhaps so terrified that he couldn't even speak. The scholar shook his head, a helpless look on his face. "You great monsters have decent strength, but your courage is far inferior to that of your ancestors. I've read in the books that in ancient times you nearly became the masters of this world. How glorious was that? The underwater great demon didn't move or hear anything. It had a resolute attitude, as if it couldn't hear anything and would rather miss the heavens than show itself. The scholar sighed. If that's the case, then I'll have to spend a little more effort. But you better think about the consequences. There was no response. The scholar rose to his feet and shook his sleeves. He didn't move at all, but a sword light whistled past and sank into the roiling river. The river paused and fell into a moment of silence. In the next moment, the place where the sword light cut through was instantly split in two. The corpse of a giant fish appeared in front of the scholar. Its body was several thousand feet long, and its scales were exposed to the sun, shining brightly. Its aura was noble, and two long dragon whiskers grew from the corners of its mouth. There were also two protrusions on its head. From the looks of it, it had clearly reached the boundary of leaping over the dragon gate. If it could smoothly break through today, it could smoothly transform into a dragon. In the great lands of the Central Wasteland, after some years, another peak great demon would appear. But now, just as it was about to transform into a dragon, it was cut apart by a sword and died at the bottom of the river. The scholar shook his head. Why bother? You only made me waste more effort. He jumped off the boulder, but didn't fall into the water. This was because after the great demon was cut down, the river vanished. Once again, it returned to the appearance of a small brook. A foot-long goldfish was floating on the surface of the brook. It was unknown where the scholar took out a charred black stick from. His movements were extremely skilled as he casually stabbed it into the water, piercing through the goldfish's mouth and tail. He lifted it up to take a look and laughed. Delicious, delicious. He started a fire and roasted the fish. The oil glistened and a delicious fragrance immediately assailed the senses. Numerous covetous gazes converged over from all directions. The heavens and the earth were deathly silent, and even the gentle breeze had stopped. A shivering fear spread out from the world itself, as if it were afraid that it would be smashed to pieces in the next moment. The scholar took off the gourd hanging at his waist. He raised his head and drank a mouthful. Then he looked around. You want to eat? Then come over. You can't reach it from so far away. No one replied. The world became even quieter. The scholar shook his head and smiled. If you aren't going to move, then I won't be polite. He brought the stick to his mouth and sucked in a breath, an intoxicated look on his face. The people of the world say that dragon meat is the best. They really don't lie to me. As he bit down, the juices of the meat splashed out. It was soft and delicious, and a rich fragrance flooded his mouth and nose. From all directions, the eyes of those around him revealed anger, cruelty, as well as a bit of burning greed that couldn't be concealed. The scholar ate a mouthful of meat and a mouthful of wine. His mouth was covered in grease, and he looked uncomfortable. He casually pointed to the surroundings and said, "You guys are just too hypocritical. All of you clearly want to eat each other up, yet you still shout about being a family. How boring." The air remained silent. No one moved, and no one even roared. They were all afraid that if their aura leaked out, they would be locked onto by him. As he ate and drank, the scholar seemed a bit drunk. His eyes were hazy, and he began to speak some gibberish. There were a lot of bits and pieces, and as he ate and drank, it was blurry and indistinct. Then he fell silent. Those eyes that gathered on him suddenly felt danger. They left without hesitation, vanishing in the blink of an eye. The scholar sat cross-legged and used his sleeves to wipe his mouth. But no matter how sloppy he was, his robes were still as clean as new, not tainted by the slightest bit of filth. Little Joe, I told you long ago, a monster is a monster. You can't believe it. You can't believe it. You said you knew back then, but what do you know? Otherwise, you wouldn't have fallen to such a state. After he finished the last mouthful of roasted fish, the ground suddenly shook. A miserable and mournful cry rang out in his ears. It was filled with endless despair, anger, and fear. A Dragon Gate realm goldfish was about to leap up and become a true dragon, becoming a peak great monster in the world. But now it was dead. All traces of it in the world were swallowed up with this one bite. From this moment on, it was truly dead. It could no longer be reborn or reincarnate. Even if one reversed the river of time, one could no longer find any trace of it among the countless lives in the river. This was the consequence of spending a bit more effort that the scholar repeatedly said. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, he fell to the ground and slept soundly. A gentle breeze started to blow across his face. The world was still silent. Even now, no one dared to make a move against this scholar that they hated to the extreme. The auspicious clouds condensed into rain. Golden raindrops fell into the lake, causing the fish in the lake to jump and cheer. From time to time, fish would leap out of the water and swallow the glittering raindrops. Many cultivators gathered outside the lake. There were young men and women with low cultivations, as well as immortal-like and unfathomable cultivators. They all came to see the heavenly rain blessing that only appeared once in 100 years. Several large fish with 2 claws crawled out of the water and faced the main peak hidden above the clouds. They knelt down and worshipped the immortal ancestor, thanking the immortal ancestor for bestowing them with a fortuitous encounter, giving their descendants a chance to gain intelligence. A drop of golden rain was an opportunity for enlightenment. No wonder the goldfish in the lake were so excited. The cultivators by the lake, no matter their cultivation level, couldn't help but feel endless respect and awe for the ancestor on the main peak when they saw this scene. Then, they felt proud from the bottom of their hearts. With a single thought, the auspicious clouds condensed into rain, enlightening all living beings. This was already a true immortal ancestor's method. In the entire divine land, there were only a few people who could do this. With the ancestor overseeing the fate and deterrence, they could cultivate in peace and not worry about disasters descending one day. Suddenly, several large fish that crawled out of the water and had 2 claws fell to the ground. Their eyes were still filled with joy and gratitude, but they were no longer breathing. Then, in the lake, countless goldfish that had jumped out of the water to catch the golden rain all turned white, covering the surface of the lake. There was dead silence. Not only was there no movement in the lake, but the many cultivators around the lake also widened their eyes in shock. Obviously, they didn't know what had happened. But then, the scene in front of them made them shiver uncontrollably from the bottom of their hearts. They saw that the corpses of the large fish in and out of the water were like clouds of smoke. Now, they were quickly fading and dispersing, disappearing in the blink of an eye. Not only that, but what made them even more frightened was that they found that their memories were actually starting to become blurry. It was as if some invisible force was forcefully erasing some of the remaining traces in their minds. Humph! A cold snort sounded in the sky. The clouds and mist were instantly shattered, revealing the main peak that looked like a miracle under the sunlight. Everyone by the lake lost consciousness at the same time. Subconsciously, they sat cross-legged and pretended to cultivate. A green-faced old man in a long robe appeared by the lake. His eyes swept across the surroundings, and his expression became even more gloomy. Little lunatic from the academy, what is he doing this time? I want to see how long you can be so arrogant. A lake of goldfish was nothing. If they died, then they died. At most, he would feel a little heartache. However, if the power of the great path erased the memories, it would inevitably hurt the souls of his disciples, which would affect the future great path. This could not be tolerated. But now, although the old man was enraged, he didn't step out to find that little lunatic from the academy and demand an explanation. First, it was difficult to enter and exit that place. Second, even if he went in, he wasn't confident that he could defeat the other party. This made the old man's expression even uglier. He gritted his teeth a few times and angrily left. The moment he disappeared, the people around the lake woke up one after another. No one revealed any abnormalities. After a brief moment of confusion, they cupped their hands together and smiled before standing up and leaving. Their memories had already been quietly erased. Chapter 1580. Marquis Loyal Marshal Ning Qin entered the palace on his own initiative to ask His Majesty to bestow him several precious treasures. The reason was that his cultivation had reached a bottleneck, and he wanted to borrow external help to break through. He spoke bluntly, and the Western Wasteland Great Emperor agreed with a wave of his hand. However, this matter couldn't be brought out in the open. The Great Emperor didn't use the national crossbow, but instead opened his own treasury and ordered people to take him there. Qin Yu respectfully bowed, his tone filled with gratitude. In truth, he wasn't too moved by this. As the saying goes, if you want a horse to run, you must feed it grass. Since the Western Wasteland Emperor wanted to use him, it wasn't a problem for him to make a few requests. In fact, the more he did this, the more the Western Wasteland Emperor would feel at ease. The eunuch brought Qin Yu to the treasury. In the study, the Great Emperor sat behind a bead curtain. His eyes flashed, revealing a thoughtful look. Suddenly, he said, "What do you think of this golden general Ning Qin?" There was no one in the hall, but after the Great Emperor spoke, a feminine voice sounded out from the shadows in the corner. "If your Majesty is willing to trust someone, then he is a good person." The Great Emperor smiled and shook his head. "Don't flatter me. You aren't good at this, and you are far inferior to the sky-bearing monarch. Just tell me what you feel about him." The shadow fell silent for a moment. Then, the feminine voice sounded out once more. "I don't feel anything wrong. Golden General Ning Qin is extremely loyal to your Majesty. However, this old servant has a feeling that there are still some secrets hidden on this person." The long river sword broke through the Joss flame barrier. Even a peak ruler wouldn't be able to withstand it. All that awaited them was death. How can Golden General Ning Qin be unharmed? This is something I can't understand. The Great Emperor behind the bead curtain nodded. "That's right, this doesn't make sense. But I have confidence that I can control Ning Qin. I don't mind him hiding some things in the dark. After all, there are no fish in clear water." He stood up and paced back and forth. Then, he shook his head, a helpless smile on his face. "You old fool. You understand me too well. I knew I couldn't hide anything from you." From the shadows, a young eunuch walked out. His skin was fair and exquisite, enough to make any woman in this world jealous. His face was soft and gentle, and his temperament was gentle. He chuckled and cupped his hands together. "This old servant is willing to share your Majesty's worries." The great sovereign waved his hand. The young eunuch turned around and left. With each step, his figure disappeared. The treasury of the imperial palace was of utmost importance. Although this was the private treasury of the great emperor of the West Wilderness, the whole world belonged to him. The value of the things inside could be imagined. The eunuch who brought Qin Yu here was the one who had passed the edict. He could be considered to be acquainted with Qin Yu. But soon, he had other matters to attend to and had no choice but to hurry over. He apologetically apologized to Qin Yu, and after Qin Yu indicated that it was fine, he smiled and pointed to a young eunuch at his side. He said that this was a junior and that he would lead the Marquis into the treasury. Qin Yu glanced at the docile and quiet little official. He thought that he was quite handsome, but if he were to change into women's clothes, he might even be called a beauty that could cause the downfall of nations. "Greetings, Marquis." The young eunuch bowed respectfully. Qin Yu smiled and nodded. "You already know what this Marquis needs? Your Majesty, the treasury is far too large. I will have to trouble you to lead the way." The young eunuch smiled. "Marquis, rest assured that before I left, eunuch already told me the location." The first item was a pitch-black piece of wood. It was the length of an adult's arm, and its surface was covered with fine cracks. It looked very common-looking, like a piece of firewood that hadn't yet been thoroughly burned in a stove. But looking carefully, one could see that between the cracks on the surface of this piece of wood, there were countless tiny arcs of lightning that constantly flashed. In the Western Wilderness Dragon Terrace County, legends say that there's a place called the Thunderfall Pond. It is a place that can naturally attract divine thunder from the highest heavens, causing it to fall without end. Within this Thunderfall Pond, there is a living verdant tree. This tree is a descendant of the ancient divine tree, the World Tree. It possesses all sorts of mystical abilities and is able to withstand tens of thousands of years of thunder without dying. This piece of wood is a withered branch that fell from the verdant tree. It contains the strength of 10 million strikes of thunder. Compared to this piece of wood, the so-called lightning-struck trees of the world are worse than mud in a mud pit. Chinyu nodded. He could feel the formidable strength contained within this scorched black piece of wood. Thank you for your explanation, eunuch. This withered branch of the verdant tree does indeed meet my requirements. The young eunuch faintly smiled. He reached out a hand and gestured, Marquis, please follow me. The treasury was extremely large, and the spells around it were tyrannical. Occasionally, a trace of aura would leak out, causing even Qin Yu's heart to race. But the young eunuch in front of him had a calm expression. He didn't know if it was because he was used to this or if there was some other reason. His thoughts raced, and he immediately suppressed them. The imperial palace was unfathomably deep, and there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons everywhere. As long as it had nothing to do with him, it was best to ignore it to avoid any complications. The second treasure was a cicada's wing. It was as thin as silk, and there was a faint halo of light flowing on its surface, like ripples in water. It was placed in a transparent bubble. The startling cicada's wings originate from a rare and wondrous object in the world. It is hidden deep underground for 3,000 years, breaks its egg at 1,000 years, grows for 1,000 years, and then emerges after 1,000 years. After breaking out of the earth, it can transform into a cicada and soar into the highest heavens, weaving between the heavens and earth. Its speed is faster than lightning, and it can travel 10,000 miles in an instant. The young eunuch smiled as he explained. He lifted a hand and gently touched the bubble. The cicada's wings seemed to be startled. The halo of light on its surface brightened, and then it disappeared. Several breaths of time later, the cicada's wings reappeared, but this time it was in another part of the bubble. This is the special ability of the startling cicada's wings. It can instantly conceal itself and cut off the perception of the world's aura. It can temporarily disappear from this part of the world and then appear somewhere else. This bubble is the remains of a deep-sea jellyfish that has lived for 10,000 years. The inside of it is a world of its own, thus it can imprison it within. Otherwise, if it were to disappear and reappear again, in just a few breaths of time, it could travel 10,000 miles, 100,000 miles, or even 1,000,000 miles away. It could randomly appear in any corner of this world. Chinyu looked at the startling cicada's wings. He was silent for a moment. Then he smiled and said, Eunuch has good insight. I admire you. The young eunuch smiled and didn't explain further. He brought Chinyu to another part of the inner treasury. The last item is called scarlet blood. He paused and turned to look at Chinyu. In truth, I am a bit curious. How did Marquis Zhongwu know of its existence? Chinyu thought for a moment. Can I not answer? The young eunuch smiled and nodded. He bowed. Of course, this is the Marquis's right. I'm only a bit curious. He no longer spoke. He walked deeper into the inner treasury. Looking at his back, Chinyu frowned for a moment before composing himself. When the two of them stopped, there was no longer a path in front of them. A lotus root appeared in front of them. It was rooted in the inner treasury. After the roots were supported by array formations and spells, the incomparably hard ground forcefully cracked open. It was as if the entire palace treasury was constantly providing it with nourishment. The few lotus leaves that grew on the lotus root were all green and glistening. The lotus flower in the middle was still in its bud state and had not yet bloomed. The young eunuch pointed a finger. This lotus flower comes from a fragment from beyond the heavens. It crossed endless space, and when it descended, it was nearly burned away. The terrifying heat it carried with it instantly evaporated the entire lake, turning it from a blue lake into a land of scarlet for 1,000 miles. But for some unknown reason, there is a lotus seed in this fragment from beyond the heavens that still retains its vitality. No one in the world knows the name or true function of this lotus. They only know that it was born sacred and that it can restrain all demons and ghosts in the world. Thus, it was received into the inner treasury and nourished with the power of the inner treasury's array formations to maintain its growth state. Then, with the help of this lotus flower, it sealed away that scarlet blood. The young eunuch smiled. As for how this scarlet blood came about and what it involves, I cannot say. I asked for the Marquis's forgiveness. Chin cupped his hands together. Eunuch has already told me enough, so how could I dare to be dissatisfied? I must thank Eunuch for your honesty. His expression was calm. He looked at the young eunuch in front of him who didn't reveal his aura, but who knew how deep he was. I wonder if Eunuch has anything I can help you with? The young eunuch smiled and bowed. The Marquis is an intelligent person, so I won't hide anything. What you need to do is simple. You only need to personally break off this lotus flower and bring it out of the inner treasury. Chin thought for a moment and nodded. The young eunuch drew back to the side and gestured with his hand. Chin strode forwards. He reached out a hand and grabbed the neck of the lotus flower. With a bit of strength, he snapped it off and turned around. Is this enough? The young eunuch bowed. Marquis, it is yours now. Chin turned his hand, and the lotus flower vanished from sight. A moment later, the inner treasury was sealed off, and the young eunuch disappeared. The eunuch that had left before ran over. Servant Wei Ming greets the Marquis. He bowed and wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead. He looked around and didn't see that little brat. He probed. That junior, just now, is a newcomer to the palace. His luck is good, and he was noticed by His Majesty, so he asked me to look after him. Just now, did he do things properly? If he offended the Marquis in any way, I ask for your forgiveness. In His Majesty's study, Wei Ming was the most successful and outstanding eunuch in the entire imperial palace. He also held the title of Chief Eunuch Commander of the palace. It could be said that his authority was monstrous, and many ministers of the imperial capital had to carefully smile in front of him. This attitude towards Chin Yu wasn't because he had the qualifications to know the top secrets of the Western Wasteland Empire, but because he had a deep understanding of the great emperor and was able to see how highly His Majesty regarded Marquis Zhongwu. No matter how powerful a eunuch was, he was only a dog at His Majesty's side. If he didn't know how to read the situation, sooner or later he would be slaughtered. Chin Yu smiled. Little eunuch has done very well. I'm very satisfied. It seemed that even Wei Ming didn't know the depths of this person. This little eunuch should be a true confidant of the Western Wasteland Great Emperor. As he thought of the previous two that had died in battle with Mr. Zhou, Chin Yu shook his head. They were different. Wei Ming let out a breath of relief. He brightly smiled. That's good. Marquis, it is that boy's good fortune to be able to come here. He slapped his forehead. Hey, I almost forgot what I came here for. His Majesty suddenly had some business to attend to, so he ordered me to inform Marquis that there is no need to thank him after you receive the item. You could just return home. Chin Yu cupped his hands together. I thank His Majesty for his grace. I will take my leave. In the study, after the great emperor received the report, he drank a cup of tea and revealed a helpless expression. I fear I can't change my personality. I don't even have the face to see Marquis Zhongwu again. Although it wasn't rare for a ruler to go back on his word, several times in such a short period of time was still a bit embarrassing. The little eunuch smiled and bowed. Your Majesty has the heart of the world in mind. You must be careful in everything you do. This is also how it should be. The great emperor humphed. He sneered. You really know how to play dumb. I asked you to go and take a look, but I didn't ask you to make a show of yourself. The little eunuch wasn't afraid. He smiled and bowed. It was my mistake. I will accept my punishment. The great emperor couldn't help but laugh. Then, a bit annoyed, he waved his hand and sent the eunuch away. The little eunuch bowed and drew back to the side. His figure melted into the shadows, and he vanished from sight. At this time, the great emperor's voice suddenly sounded out. Go and investigate Nine-Tailed tracks and report back to me. Yes, Your Majesty. In terms of geographical location, Sige's city was still a very, very long distance from the imperial capital. Even a powerful cultivator would need to spend a great deal of time to cross such a vast territory. But as one of the 108 main cities, the transmission array was connected to the imperial capital. As long as one obtained permission, They could directly enter the capital region. From this point of view, it was naturally very close. In the western wasteland's imperial capital, the stone bridge had already been reduced to ashes, let alone Seagay's city. Even in a peaceful world, there were still many flies and dogs lurking around. If someone died, that was a completely normal matter. The city lord mansion wouldn't even bat an eyelid at this. But as the Wutong Commandery's Leaf family's letter arrived at Seagay's city first, the wily and far-sighted Lord City Lord felt his head explode. The death of someone was a small matter, but it also depended on who died. Who knew which Li Tsangzhou was? But since he could incite the Wudong Commandery's Leaf family to fly into a rage, this matter would be blown out of proportion. At the first moment, Chen Yuanxin reported to the Imperial Palace to inform His Majesty of this matter. But before the Imperial Palace gave a response, 3 people from the Wudong Commandery's Leaf family had already arrived at Seagay City. Although the family head, Li Chenghao, didn't come personally, the leader of the Leaf family was an old ancestor who had been in seclusion for many years. His aura was obscure and deep like the sea. Although Chen Yuanxin wasn't worried that the other party would attack him, beads of sweat still appeared on his forehead as he respectfully welcomed them into the City Lord mansion. City Lord Chen, although my grandson's talent is average, I watched him grow up. Now that he has been harmed by a thief, I must find the true culprit and take revenge for him. Otherwise, I will be ashamed to face his parents who have passed away long ago. Old Ancestor Li spoke slowly, his voice calm but full of pressure. Chen Yuanxin said in a low voice, "Rest assured, Old Ancestor, since this happened in my Seagay city, I will find the culprit even if I have to dig 3 feet into the ground to give you an explanation." The Chen family's group was placed in the most exquisite guest courtyard of the City Lord mansion. The doors closed. Old Ancestor Li, who was walking in front, turned around and respectfully bowed. "Two little ancestors, Zicheng has offended you." Li Gu stood up, his face expressionless. Li Ruhua smiled and waved her hand. "We already agreed on this. There's no need to mind it." She swept her eyes around. "Li Zicheng, you stay here. We're going out for a walk." "Two little ancestors, please go ahead." Li Gu lifted a hand and slashed forwards. Space quietly split open, and he and Li Gu stepped inside. Space closed up and disappeared. This move left Old Ancestor Li sighing with emotion. In terms of cultivation, he was a bit stronger. But disregarding everything else, just this technique of breaking through the world was something he absolutely couldn't accomplish. Although the sword in little Ancestor Li Ji's hand wasn't clear, its might was enough to make one's heart race. It was really enviable. Shua, in Seagay City, outside a lake, Li Gu and Li Ruhua's figures appeared. Several small courtyards were scattered around the lakeside. It was already late, and lights could be seen in the distance. Li Ruhua looked around. She frowned imperceptibly before immediately composing herself. "That's right, that person died here," Li Gu lightly said. "For better or worse, the Wutong Commandery's Li family is close to our bloodline. The spells used in the ancestral shrine should also be of the same bloodline. If the other party was able to delay for several days after killing someone before revealing this matter, then it isn't an ordinary method." Li Ruhua smiled. "We just need to be careful, but I hope that the culprit will directly jump in front of us." Li Gu didn't speak. His expression was calm. He was extremely confident in the sword in his hand. Chapter 1581. Under the willow by the lake, a cool breeze caressed her face. Li Ruhua closed her eyes, her mind sensing the remnant aura of this world. Li Gu stood there holding his sword. His expression was calm, but a bright light flashed in his eyes. All of a sudden, the cool breeze became turbulent, and then it became chaotic. Li Gu turned his head and looked over. He frowned and revealed a serious expression. After several breaths of time, Li Ruhua opened her eyes. Her face was pale and tired. She slowly said, "Li Tsangzhou did die here, but the murderer's aura was messed up by someone with a great magical ability. I tried to trace it back, but all I found was chaos." As she said this, She couldn't help but raise her hand and rub her eyebrows to reduce the soreness and discomfort. Li Ji's expression was solemn. Li Ruhua was born with a magical ability and was the focus of the family's nurturing. The two of them worked together, but they were also competitors. Thus, he had some understanding of Li Ruhua's abilities. Even she couldn't sense any clues. The person who messed up the aura must be extremely strong. Looking at each other, the two Li family little ancestors from the central wasteland, divine continent, could sense each other's surprise. Before, in front of Li Chenghao, they had mentioned the nine-tailed demon fox that had appeared in the imperial capital. That was just an excuse. It was hasty and crude. Thinking about it, the seemingly timid but incomparably shrewd Li family head had already sensed it. But looking at it again, things had become very strange. To be able to use a great magical ability to mess up the aura and seal off Li Ruhua's detection. Was this person really not related to the nine-tailed demon fox in the imperial capital? Moreover, the murdered Li Cangzhou was a member of the Wudong Commandery's Li family. In the Western Wasteland Empire, if there was no karma, why would anyone casually kill him? And his background was unfathomable. "Who are you?" With a low shout, two patrolling guards saw the two people by the lake. There were several courtyards next to the small lake in the building. Arrangements had been made in advance for the daily guests they received. Now that two unfamiliar faces had appeared, the guard were naturally alarmed and angry. If they had ill intentions and came for a certain guest, they would not be able to absolve themselves from the blame if something went wrong. But soon, the two guards no longer had to worry about this. A sword light slashed out, and two heads rolled off. As blood sprayed out, the two Li family little ancestors had already turned and left. The descending moon was instantly thrown into chaos. The steward, who had a deep background and was on friendly terms with the city lord's residents, clenched his teeth with an ashen face. On one hand, he did his best to appease the guests, while on the other, he clamored that there must be an explanation for today's matter. But the result was that nothing was done. The city lord's mansion knew of the murder in Linyu Tower, but did nothing. This silence caused the heart of the manager of the Descending Moon Pavilion to palpitate. Following that, a great sense of unease grew within him, and he did not dare to continue making a fuss. After all, as he had said before, everyone was different. If he died, then so be it. Chen Yuanshan took a sip of tea and smiled bitterly. Although there was no evidence, Su Shun had seen the residual sword intent of killing people. So far, it was still so fierce that he felt frightened at a glance. Who else could it be? Zichen, he old ancestor said. Chun Li, the young man, Chun and Lily said he ancestor Li and he. Chung Feng, Li, he. He closed his eyes and continued to cultivate. If it weren't for the fact that these two central desolate family little ancestors represented a turning point for him to break through in the future, it would have been impossible for him to appear here. When one's cultivation reached this step, everything else was fleeting. Climbing up the Great Tao was the most important matter. Li Ge closed the door and drew his sword niche. With a sword cry, the aura in the room was cut apart and sealed away. He looked up at Li Ruhua. "It looks like we will have to make a trip to the western desolate imperial capital." Before this, when she used her supernatural ability to sense, it was indeed chaotic fragments. But she was still able to lock onto a trace of an indescribable aura. In that direction was the imperial capital. Little Meaty was inspecting the three treasures that Qinyu had brought back from the imperial palace's treasury. A withered branch of the greenwood. It had withstood the bombardment of countless bolts of thunder. It could be considered the world's highest level thunderstruck wood. Startling cicada wings, a wondrous object of the heavens and earth. A cicada that could soar into the highest heavens after 3,000 years. A wing that was left behind after being hunted. Scarlet blood, unknown origin. It was wrapped and sealed by a lotus bud. Not bad. They can all be considered good things. And besides that, there are also unexpected harvests. Little Meaty flicked the shell of the 10,000-year jellyfish. As she watched the startling cicada wings disappear, it slowly reappeared. This shell has the effect of isolating itself from the world. After refining it, you can obtain a treasure that can conceal your aura. She looked at Chinyu. However, the most precious of all is this lotus flower. If you're willing to trade it to me, I can erase a third of your remaining debt. Chinyu thought for a moment and came to a conclusion. This lotus flower in front of him was worth a sixth of a Joss flame child. His eyes brightened. What is its use? Little Meaty said, refine it into the divine soul, making it impervious to all evils. She tapped her fingers together and looked at the stump of the lotus bud. She smiled and said, of course, if you can take out the entire lotus flower and erase all of your debts, there might still be some left over. Chinyu thought for a moment and then shook his head without hesitation. Let alone the imperial palace's treasury. Even if it was placed on the side of the road, no one would dare to touch it. Otherwise, did they really think that the great emperor above the 9th level in the imperial palace was a clay bodhisattva? Little Meaty curled her lips and didn't say anything more. I'll leave the scarlet blood for you. Since the excuse is to break through to the next realm, you should at least put on an act. Moreover, your current level is indeed a bit lacking. As for the startling cicada wings and the jellyfish shell, I've thought about it. I can help you refine them into a treasure, but you must know that my fee isn't low. She lifted a hand and pointed at the thunderstruck wood. This pitch-black thing will be my reward. Chinyu nodded without hesitation. All right, then, I will trade the refined treasure to you in exchange for arranging the Joss flame child. Cough, but you must temporarily rent this treasure to me for a period of time. Don't worry, I will definitely pay an additional price. Little Meaty covered her face with her hands and let out a pained groan. She felt that the current Chinyu was becoming less and less adorable. The strength of his shamelessness was truly changing with each passing day. It was advancing by leaps and bounds. Seawatch City urgently submitted a memorial. Wudong County's Lee family old ancestor had arrived with 2 juniors to search for the murderer of the Lee family's juniors. Then, just a day later, another urgent memorial was sent to the Imperial Palace. Old ancestor Lee was bringing 2 juniors with him to the Imperial capital. In the memorial, there was a helpless and bitter mention. Because of old ancestor Lee's insistence, his son Xinshanglu was accompanying him. Behind the bead curtain, the great emperor laid down the memorial. A cold light flashed in his eyes. In the shadows of the study, there was a light sigh. In these past years, Qin Yuanshan hadn't been too smart. Today, he had made another bad move. There was no way out for him in the future. Humph! You old fool, don't think you can be so insolent just because I trust you. The great emperor angrily roared. A soft and feminine voice sounded out. I don't dare. Your Majesty, please calm your anger. I just feel that this Qin Yuanshan has failed to live up to your trust. He is far too stupid. The great emperor snorted coldly. Since Li Zicheng has personally appeared, the 2 people behind him must be from the Li family of the Middle Baron region. I want to know why these people have come to the capital of the Western Baron region. He lowered his head and looked down from above. In the shadows, an illusory figure appeared and bowed. I am investigating, but the aura of that 9-tailed demon fox has completely disappeared. I think it must have used some external object to conceal itself. I only want results. Yes. In a private residence, young Master Min Xiangtai's recent performance made everyone in the residence, including the old master, extremely happy. Not only did he not spend a lot of money to go to the brothel, but he also picked up a book and studied hard in the study every day. Of course, the old master was very clear about his youngest son's personality. How could he easily believe him? But after many observations, the conclusion he came to was the same. Min Xiangtai seemed to have suddenly become enlightened. In the world of cultivators where demons and ghosts coexisted, there was no lack of strange things. The old master's expression changed. He gritted his teeth and called for the housekeeper. Late at night, Min Xiangtai's courtyard door was open again. He was directly dragged out of his bed by 2 red-clothed men. He shouted, "Father, what are you doing?" and poured a whole night of black dog blood into his mouth. Although the pitiful young master had some foundation in cultivation, he was still like a weak girl in the hands of the two burly men. He could only be wantonly played with without the slightest ability to resist. Following behind the old master was an old celestial master dressed in a bright yellow robe. He held a talisman in his hand and slapped it heavily on the forehead of Min Xiangtai, who was vomiting dog blood all over his body. "Hey, evil creature, you still don't want to show yourself?" He formed a seal with his hand, and the talisman ignited without any fire. Then it lit up Min Xiangtai's hair. It was quite a lively scene. When everyone finally managed to extinguish the flames, the pitiful Min Xiangtai, who was originally elegant and graceful, had become a greenish-purple pig head that had been scorched by the smoke and punched and kicked. It was truly a tragic sight to behold. After pouring water on him and pinching his philtrum, Min Xiangtai woke up after a long time. He cried out, "Father, my dear father, just what do you want to do?" This voice, this gaze, there was no mistaking it. This was definitely his own son. The old master let out a long breath. Then there was a moment of awkwardness. The old madam rushed over upon hearing the news. She hugged Min Xiangtai and cried out, "My poor child." Then she couldn't help but turn around and grab the old master. With a series of scratching techniques, she began to make a scene on the spot. After saying, "Ancestors bless me, my son has truly become enlightened," the old master laughed heartily as he ran away like a rat. After a moment, the courtyard was finally restored to tranquility. After using the old celestial master's ointment, the bruises on Min Xiangtai's face had greatly subsided. After sending away the two nearby study maids that served him, Min Xiangtai sat behind his desk and covered his face with his hands. He really didn't have the face to see anyone. A light chuckle suddenly echoed in his ears. Little young master's father is truly a wonderful person. He had intruded twice at night, both on full moons and at exactly the right time. If one were to say it was a coincidence, then it was far too much of a coincidence. But then again, this was normal. After all, how could an ordinary family casually hide the heaven-shrouding book that could hide a great monster in their study? Wasn't that the most wonderful thing about it? Wonderful to the point that even she, a nine-tailed monster fox, couldn't sense the aura of this old master. Min Xiangtai thought that the fairy maiden was teasing him. His face flushed red, and he cupped his hands together. "Fairy maiden, please don't poke my face." The woman faintly smiled and didn't say anything. Since he was a wonderful person, then she would mind her own business and mind her own business. She yawned and looked at Min Xiangtai, who had a nervous expression and a burning passion in his eyes. "Little young master, I am very tired. I won't be accompanying you tonight." She turned around and melted into the book like smoke, vanishing from sight. Chapter 1582. In recent years, the biggest joke of Sea-Watch City was Chun Shanlu. This young master of the city, Lord Manor, had an extremely noble status. He was one of the most distinguished figures in the city. But his mistake was that he had offended someone he shouldn't have offended. Back in the Descending Moon Pavilion, the conflict had shaken the entire city. Of course, this wasn't a secret. As time passed, people heard a few words about what they shouldn't know. If that General Jinwu was just a nameless nobody, then it would have been fine. But after he entered the capital, he had a great stroke of luck. One after another, without giving people too much time to digest, he had become a third-class Marquis Zhongwu, a great general of the same rank. It was clear that in front of His Majesty, he was a very popular person. In comparison, Chan Shanglu, the elegant gentleman, was the real clown. In particular, not long ago, when Marquis Zhongwu received the emperor's order to report to the capital, the city lord Qin Yuanshan personally came forward and brought Qin Shanglu to apologize. His father had broken his leg and caused Deputy General Su Shan to lose his arm. In the end, they couldn't turn hostility into friendship and parted on bad terms. The more His Majesty valued Marquis Zhongwu, the more awkward Chun Shanglu's position as the city lord of Sea-Watch City would be. The connections involved could be seen if one thought about it. Thus, in Sea-Watch City, It seemed like everything was calm and peaceful. But underneath this calm, there were countless undercurrents surging. The territory of the Western Wilderness was vast, but there were only 108 main cities, which implied some kind of heavenly Tao. Being the lord of a city not only meant status and power, but also the imperceptible blessing of the great Tao, which was of great help to cultivation. Such a position naturally attracted many people. Over and over again, with all sorts of karma superimposed, Chun Shanglu became a drunkard in the mansion who was always drunk. One day, he was drunk again. As he chased after several maids, he seemed to see someone as beautiful as a fairy. Chun Shanglu laughed as he rushed forward. He seemed to hear his father's angry scolding. His drunkenness slightly dissipated, but he didn't stop. Instead, his laughter became even more wanton. A sweet fragrance entered his nose. But before he could truly embrace the beauty in front of him, his vision turned black and he fell unconscious. He was in a daze for an unknown period of time, and when he woke up, he found himself in a moving carriage. "You're awake." She didn't open her eyes, but she seemed to know everything. Chun Shanglu raised his hand and rubbed his sore glabella. He struggled to sit up and said in a deep voice, "Who are you? Where am I?" The woman's eyes were still closed. "Don't worry, you weren't kidnapped. Chen Yuanshan personally promised to let you leave with us." Then this is the Western Wasteland Imperial City. Chun Shangle's pupils shrank, and he seriously looked at the woman in front of him. He stood up and respectfully bowed. Chun Shangle had no intention of offending Fairy Maidenly. "I ask Fairy Maiden to forgive me." The woman let out a deep breath. She opened her eyes and looked at him, a smile on her face. Sir Chun is truly intelligent. But as a man, if you give up on yourself after such a small setback, you're simply too weak. Chen Shanglu laughed self-deprecatingly. Fairy is right. His eyes were a little dim. He shook his head and said, "Why did you bring me to the capital?" Li Ruhua smiled brightly. "Young master, please lead the way." She looked at Chun Shangle in front of her, but she wasn't looking at him. She was looking at the entangled karmic aura behind him. That day at the City Lore Mansion, it was because of this that Chun Shangle was able to live to this day. Otherwise, Li Ji's sword would have taught him that there were some women in this world that you could never touch. However, Li Ge wasn't here, and there were only her and Chun Shangle in the carriage. It was hard to say what this meant. Chun Shangle hesitated for a moment. He cupped his hands together and said, "It's good that I can help Fairy Maiden." He sat down cross-legged and closed his eyes to rest. Li Ruhua was startled. Then, she smiled and looked at him with a bit more interest in her eyes. She looked away and closed her eyes once more, a smile on her face. He had clearly come from the broken world of the southwest desolate region. Not long after entering the desolate region, he had met with fate and obtained his current status. This was even more interesting. A moment later, the carriage stopped. Li Ruhua reached out and lifted the curtains, looking outside. Qin Yu, who was addicted to renting, was chased out by little Meaty. When this fellow became slippery, his skin was truly thick. But she couldn't help but admit that this could be considered an unorthodox path. If she closed one eye, there was indeed room for manipulation. After all, in the countless years she had lived, she had never done this with anyone. Most of the time, it was a one-time deal. This was because the vast majority of those who traded with her only had a single chance. Of course, the premise of all of this was that Meaty was willing. Otherwise, would it be anyone else who tried it? Humph humph, did they really think that their jade-like hands couldn't be clasped between two fingers, so that their brains would splatter everywhere? But she still had to put on an act. Otherwise, little Qin Yu would definitely reach for a yard after taking an inch. If he really touched her bottom line one day, should she kill him or not? So, intermittently giving him a bit of warning was good for both herself and the other. And at this time, Meaty was using the jellyfish shell and startling cicada wings as materials to refine a very interesting treasure. She flicked her fingers, and layers of fluctuations splashed out in the void. As these fluctuations collided with each other, they drew out the phantom of a great furnace. The jellyfish shell and startling cicada wings floated in this great furnace phantom, already in a half-melted state. Faint traces of mysterious energy flowed around them. She could casually forge an ordinary artifact. However, firstly, the materials used were pretty good. Secondly, once this artifact was forged, even if it was hers, although she felt a little strange, little Meaty still felt that she should forge this artifact to perfection. Thus, she had used a little trick to borrow this furnace from someone. Although it was only a shadow and didn't even have a tenth of the true body strength, it was more than enough to refine these two items. At this time, Meaty suddenly frowned. She looked up, a cold chill surging in the depths of her eyes. Someone was using the path of karma to investigate matters involving Chinyu. Her first thought was that the cover-up she had made before had already been seen through. If this was true, then there would surely be a great battle. Even she would find herself in great trouble. But soon, Meaty's complexion relaxed a little. Although someone had indeed come looking for her, things weren't as bad as they seemed. She looked at the great furnace phantom in front of her that was refining something. Her lips curved up in a smile, and she lifted a hand. Hum! The cauldron trembled slightly, and a faint buzzing sound came from within. It was as if a child was hitting the cauldron with a stick, causing it to tremble. With a stuffy cough, Li Ruhua paled and shock filled her eyes. She ignored Qin Shangolv and said, "Let's go." The carriage sped away. As they left the street, Li Ruhua spat out a mouthful of blood, but her complexion actually improved. She was indeed fierce. Outside the loyal Marshal Marquis mansion, she had used supernatural abilities to trace back karma. But before she could make any harvests, she had been forced back by the loud sound of a bell. If it weren't for the fact that the loud sound had only forced her to retreat and had no intention of pursuing the matter, the consequences wouldn't have been as simple as spitting out a mouthful of blood. Li Ruhua wiped the blood from the corners of her lips and turned around. She looked in the direction of the loyal Marshal Marquis mansion, and a sharp light flashed in her eyes. Qin Shangolv suddenly said, "Fairy Maiden, did you come here because it involved the loyal Marshal Marquis Ning Qin?" Li Ruhua glanced at him. She shouldn't have said these things to a mere traveler, but at this time her thoughts stirred. She smiled and nodded, yes. Qin Shangolv cupped his hands together. "If there is anything I can help you with, Fairy Maiden, please feel free to ask." He didn't conceal his resentment towards the loyal Marshal Marquis. Li Ruhua smiled. All right. She looked away. She spread out her fingers and looked at a red spot on her palm. Space trembled and fluctuated. The furnace phantom appeared. At this time, it let out a light sigh. "Sir, I am willing to lend you a furnace projection to help you refine something. But I didn't want to be infected with such great karma." A voice sounded out in the room. Little Meaty had a calm expression. It was clear she had already expected this. She giggled. "We are old friends, so don't be so stingy. If I had a choice, I would rather not have my friendship with you." Her voice was calm, but there was a trace of sorrow and loneliness. After a brief silence, she continued to say, "After this, the final favor I owed you in the past will be written off. There will no longer be any connection between us." Little Meaty nodded. "Whatever you say. Thank you." The furnace phantom returned to silence. The loyal Marshal Marquis Ning Qin had announced to the outside world that he would be going into seclusion. But this wasn't just an excuse. He was truly beginning to cultivate. Since he already had the opportunity to openly enter the Imperial Palace treasury, wouldn't he be mocking the great Emperor's intelligence if he didn't hurry up and go into seclusion? It was obvious that there was a huge problem. Moreover, Chinyu's current boundary had indeed reached a bottleneck. It was time to take another step forwards. Otherwise, in today's social circle, everyone was a big shot, although there was meat behind them. At the end of the day, they had to be strong themselves to be truly worry-free. What was Scarlet Blood? Little Meaty did not explain, and the little eunuchs of the Imperial Palace also said that they could not speak of it. No matter how he thought about it, Little Meat didn't have any motive to harm him. "Then let's eat." He opened his mouth and swallowed, and the lotus bud went straight into his stomach. This was Little Meaty's suggestion. She said that the effects were the best. At most, they would suffer a little, but compared to the benefits, it was negligible. Although Cheney was already mentally prepared and only believed 30% of Little Meaty's words, he soon discovered that even 30% was too much. A terrifying burning sensation was released from his chest and abdomen, as though his entire body was burning. He was placed into the billowing waves of fire in the alchemy furnace. From the inside out, whether it was every inch of his flesh and blood, or even his soul itself, everything was placed within, withstanding the pain of a pot of boiling oil. Luckily, there was still the lotus flower that he swallowed into his stomach. As the scarlet blood dissipated, it released a cool aura that protected Qin Yu's last shred of consciousness. Otherwise, he feared he wouldn't be able to withstand it for even a moment before fainting, causing all of his efforts to be wasted. To Qin Yu, this was certainly a good thing. But on the other hand, it was because his consciousness was clear that he could clearly feel every pain he was experiencing. This feeling was so sour that it couldn't be any better. Little Meaty, consider yourself ruthless. Just you wait. I, Qin, won't settle accounts with you in the future. The old master of the residence was a respectable person. His family was wealthy, and he was always kind and charitable. In the surrounding neighborhoods, he had a good reputation. Although, he was a little bit lecherous, but no one was perfect, right? We had to have a tolerant heart. Not long after the ninth sun rose, the residence's side door opened. The old master, who was used to waking up early to take a stroll, pushed open the door and walked out. Yo, I've run into you. Morning. I'll be here in a bit. Same old place, same old rules. As he greeted others, the old master began to stroll. This was an unchanging rule that he followed every day, and the surrounding residents were already well aware of it. In addition, although the old master's eyes were often lecherous, and he often found it hard to move his legs when he saw beautiful young women, he had never had a bad reputation. As time passed, people no longer cared about it. So what if he looked at him twice? It wasn't as if he would lose his flesh. There were even some shrewd women who would throw flirtatious glances at him on their own initiative. The old master immediately gulped and then lowered his head as he walked past. He muttered to himself, "A gentleman moves his eyes, but not his hands. A gentleman moves his eyes, but not his hands." As he got closer, he could even hear it. As it spread out, it became a joke that wasn't too big or too small. As usual, he walked a circle around the residence. The time he took wasn't too long or too short. It just happened to be an hour. At this time, the ninth sun was a bit higher and there were more people walking on the streets. The old master arrived at his usual breakfast shop not too far from his home. "Old master, here is your seat. Your steamed buns and tea have just been prepared for you. Eat it while it's hot." The shopkeeper greeted him with a smile and a respectful tone. Behind him hid a 17 or 18-year-old girl. Her black hair was combed into a large braid, and her eyes were evasive, not daring to show her face. The old master smacked his lips. This little girl is almost 18 this year, right? Time really flies. In the blink of an eye, she's already a big girl. Someone jeered, "Old master, you are a person of virtue and prestige. You have personally seen this little girl grow from a bean sprout to this young lady. You wouldn't have any other thoughts, right?" A burst of laughter rang out. The black-haired girl's face flushed red, but she wasn't embarrassed or angry. She was already used to it. Especially in these past 2 years, after her body was fully developed, the old master's eyes would linger for a bit. He would do this almost every day. The shopkeeper laughed as he watched, not angry at all. It was as if the old master asked, he would really let his daughter enter the mansion and become a concubine. The old master laughed and scolded, "Such delicious steamed buns can't even stuff your mouth." Another burst of laughter rang out. But today there was something strange. The old master, who had only eaten half of his breakfast, suddenly stood up and left in a hurry. What is it? Could it be that the old master really has some thoughts, but now that we've seen through him, you don't have the face to stay? A man laughed, but this time he didn't receive any response. The customers in the breakfast shop all looked at him, their gazes not gentle at all. The smile on the man's face slowly faded away. replaced by a dark and vicious expression. The shopkeeper walked over and placed down a basket of steamed buns. "This is for the customer. This meal is on me." But the following words caused the man's slightly relaxed expression to turn incomparably ugly. This lowly one's family once encountered a calamity. Thanks to the old master's rescue, we were able to live peacefully until today. So, please don't come here again in the future. I have truly troubled you." The man fiercely slammed the table. But at this time, a chill rose from the depths of his heart. He looked at the old shopkeeper in front of him, who had a kind smile and was slightly bowing. He clenched his teeth and used the last of his courage to throw down a silver coin. "I'll pay the bill." He stood up and left, his back in a distressed state. "Pfft, where did this poor fellow come from? Why didn't he ask around? Do you think our old master's reputation is something that he can mock? We were joking around because of our many years of friendship. No one took it seriously, but this man is really annoying. Boss, you did well. If he had dared to cause trouble just now, my son would have taken up a position in the imperial garrison and made him suffer the consequences." The shopkeeper laughed as he listened. He returned to the back of the stall and continued to make steamed buns. Mist rose up and covered his face, completely concealing the worry in his eyes as he looked at the old master's house. Chapter 1583. The general guarding the city gates, Yuan Yi-Ba, was drunk from drinking last night. He was supported by his subordinates and brought back to his own courtyard. In the middle of the night, there was a creaking sound as the door opened. There was a rustling sound as a soft body slid in from his blankets. In his sleep, he muttered some gibberish that could not be heard clearly. General Yuan turned around and explored the valley with his hands. Then, he flipped himself up and felt extremely happy. It was as if he was galloping on the battlefield. His life was very satisfying and complete. Galloping and galloping, the bed creaked through the night. When the sky brightened and the room began to brighten, Yuan Yi-Ba looked at the woman in his arms and his mouth twitched. Oh no, drinking will ruin me." He stood up and put on his clothes. No matter how loud the shouts from behind him, he didn't even turn his head. Just as he opened the courtyard doors and took a few steps, someone chased after him. It was one of his trusted aides. He smiled and gave him a thumbs up. "General is as vigorous as a dragon and as fierce as a tiger. Even this lowly one couldn't sleep for half a night. You are truly amazing." Yuan Yi-Ba was embarrassed at first, but then he became extremely annoyed. He turned around with a smile on his face. "In 2 days, I will give you a prescription to strengthen your foundation. After you drink it, you will also be as vigorous as you are now." With a smiling face, he cursed in his heart. What a traitor. This general thought that you wanted to let me have a taste of that charming little wife of his. But who would have thought that you would actually take advantage of the darkness of the night to send your own little sister over? Why don't you take a piss and look at yourself in the mirror? If I knew it was your little sister, I would have turned around and left. Whoever came was just a bastard. After sending this brat away, Yuan Yi-Ba quickly walked away as he thought about how he would deal with this bastard in the future. This was the so-called playing to someone's liking, but instead kicking the horse's leg. This should be it. As he turned a corner, the light of the 9 suns shined on his face. Yuan Yi-Ba subconsciously narrowed his eyes, feeling a bit dizzy. After a moment, his body shivered and Yuan Yi-Ba regained his composure. His eyes widened and he looked around in panic. On the long street, there were many people coming and going. However, there were several pedestrians that were attracted by his movements, revealing puzzled expressions. Yuan Yi-Ba walked away with his head lowered. After he was far away, Yuan Yi-Ba raised his hand and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Although he was just a city gate guard who had been stuck in his original position for many years and hadn't been promoted for many years, he had lived for a long time and had seen some things. Just now, everything seemed normal, but he felt that there was another story hidden in that daze. However, no matter how he tried to think back, he could only see a blank space in front of him. Something must have happened, but I'm just a small city gate guard. In the big pond that is the imperial capital, I'm at most a little tortoise the size of a fingernail. How is it worth spending so much effort? The more he thought about it, the more panicked he became. His face turned pale, and cold sweat dripped down his forehead. All of a sudden, a chuckle echoed in his ears. General Yuan, there's no need to panic. I'm here to confirm one thing. Next, I might need your cooperation. I advise you to tell me the truth, otherwise there will be trouble. With a thud, Yuan Eba squatted on the ground and stared at the shadow beneath his feet. That's right, it was the one who had spoken just now, but its voice was that of a woman sweet and sweet. Gulp. Yuan Eba swallowed a mouthful of saliva as he felt his ears ringing and his vision turning black. They found the city gate guard Yuan Eba as a breakthrough point. In addition, that person didn't intentionally hide his whereabouts. Soon, they were able to follow the clues and lock onto Zhongwu Marquis Manor. It really was that place. Li Ruhuan narrowed her eyes. She waved her hand for everyone to leave. Although the central wasteland divine continent was high and lofty, they still had to make arrangements in advance for the surrounding empires. As one of the top families in the central wasteland, the Li family naturally had some preparations. Now that they had used it a little, it was more than enough to investigate some information. When they heard that Li Tsangzhou had been killed, they were moved. When they arrived at Sea Viewing City, they discovered the karma on Chun Shangla's body. When they spied on Zhongwu Marquis Manor, they were forced to retreat with a warning. In addition, after confirming that Li Tsangzhou had died, someone had borrowed his body and taken him to Zhongwu Marquis Manor. Connecting all of this together, all of the clues pointed towards Zhongwu Marquis Ningqin. Li Ge was expressionless. His eyes were solemn. He slowly said, I feel that things are going a bit too smoothly. After a brief pause, he glanced at her. I don't doubt your judgment, but things are indeed as they are. Li Ruhuan nodded. I know what you mean. We need to be cautious lest we fall into a trap. When a new barbarian sovereign was born, for some unknown reason, his aura was isolated. Even the 13th tower couldn't lock onto him. Just thinking about the methods involved was enough to make one's heart tremble. It was inconceivable. This time, the top families of the central wasteland divine continent had been ordered by the 13th tower to search for the barbarian sovereign. This was not an ordinary matter. So, for clues and suspects to be delivered to them so easily made them feel uneasy. We have to try. What if it is him? Li Ruhua slowly said, her eyes bright. Even if he isn't, there is still a trace of aura on General Jinwu's body. This means that there must be some connection between him and the barbarian sovereign. Li Ge thought for a moment. He nodded. All right, but we must be careful. Of course. After all, we are here to investigate the cause of Wudong Commandery's Li Tsangzhou's death. There is also Li Zicheng ahead of us. Li Ruhua smiled. He was only a branch bloodline. If he could be used as a shield or a chess piece in a critical situation, she wouldn't be lenient. Li Ge stood up. Then let Li Zicheng make a trip to the Imperial Palace as soon as possible. General Jinwu is currently a chess piece of the Western Wasteland Great Emperor. This is the Western Wasteland Imperial Capital. We cannot be too rude to the Great Emperor of a country. Trouble hadn't completely left. Without evidence, one could only rely on intuition. But Meaty's intuition was even more accurate than evidence. This didn't make sense. Of course, there were some existences in this world that were unreasonable to begin with. Otherwise, why would the world itself be able to suppress her, but still be unable to take another step forward? She no longer needed to look after the furnace projection in the shaking space. Since that person agreed to lend it to her, she didn't need to worry about any problems occurring. Otherwise, the two of them had just settled their old debts. Humph, humph. She paced back and forth, glancing at the area where Qin Yu was in seclusion. Hiss! Little Qin Yu's patience was quite good. He had lasted until now and hadn't fainted yet. He had suffered a bit too much this time. But as the saying went, only those who suffered the most hardship could rise above others. She was doing this for his own good. Qin Yu would definitely be able to understand her good intentions, right? Cough, cough. Inexplicably, she felt a bit guilty. Meaty rubbed her nose. She suddenly felt that this action was similar to Qin Yu's, and a look of disgust crossed her face. This brat, She hated him just by looking at him. Unknowingly, he had infected her with his bad habits. How hateful. She might as well ignore this matter and let him suffer a bit. That way, he wouldn't grow arrogant and complacent after everything went smoothly for him. Eh, Meaty cried out. She took a step forwards and vanished. When she reappeared, she was atop a roof. She looked up towards a distant region of the imperial capital. Her eyes brightened, revealing a bit of surprise. How fierce. Although my current state isn't good, I was still able to hide right under my eyes for so long. If I didn't reveal my aura on my own initiative, I wouldn't have been able to sense it at all. Oh, so there's an array formation that borrows the smoke and fire of the world to conceal itself. This method isn't ordinary at all. No wonder I was able to live so peacefully in the Western Wasteland's imperial capital for so many years. Meaty subconsciously rubbed her chin, but at this time, she didn't realize that this action was also very familiar. Perhaps she could use this to make a fuss. If she handled it properly, not only would this trouble be solved, but she could even further clear Qin Yu's name. Otherwise, if her identity was really discovered, then once those idiots on the 13th floor went crazy, it would be very troublesome. As her thoughts raced, Meaty revealed a faint smile. But soon, this smile froze at the corners of her lips. I am an extremely mysterious almighty being that hides within space and time. My might is unfathomable. I trade with all living beings and earn their lives and even their souls. From the start, it has always been me standing on a divine altar, looking down upon those pitiful worms that are struggling. When did I become like this? This just why? Meaty felt a sense of loss. She began to become listless and listless. She sat on the eaves, leaning back and basking in the warm sunlight. She gently tapped her fingers against the tiles. After a while, her fingers froze. She grabbed her head with both hands and rolled back and forth with an anguished wail. In the distance, a chicken that was curled up in the arms of a maid and rubbing its soft chest suddenly shivered. It looked up at the eaves and saw that the great demon king was in a strange state. It flapped its wings and flew away, turning tail and running away. But in a flash, when the chicken overlord regained its composure, it discovered that it was already in someone's arms. Although there was more flesh on her chest, and it was also softer and more comfortable, it didn't dare to move. It obediently shivered, its eyes wide with sorrow. It wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Why was it always me that was injured? I was just taking a stroll, and yet I encountered the great demon king going crazy. Moreover, if you don't feel well, then go look for that fellow Qin Yu. Why is he always using his demonic palms on such a handsome and cute little chicken? After all, the borrowed skin couldn't last long. After leaving the imperial capital, he went through 2 more teleportations and left the core area of the West Wilderness. Then he changed his clothes. His reputation couldn't compare with that of Wudong County's Lee family, but he could still be considered clean and had a bit of a reputation. He smoothly entered the border. After changing his clothes, he became a scout of the Western Wilderness. Like a fish returning to the sea, he drilled into the savage Western territory, disappearing without a trace. Several days later, an unremarkable scout had been killed in the Western Border Army camp. This sort of matter occurred nearly every day, so it naturally wouldn't arouse any suspicions. Then, without stopping, this fellow who had been immersed in hurrying along was exhausted several times. He couldn't help but raise his head and think to himself, why didn't the Great Witch also build some transmission arrays within the borders of our barbarians? Hurrying along is just too difficult. Just as this thought appeared, the space around him twisted and a boundless grasping force wrapped around him. Great Witch, I was wrong. Please don't lower yourself to my level. There was a series of distortions. When his field of vision stabilized, cold winds howled in the air, sweeping up countless snowflakes. Chapter 1584. The bone-chilling cold really pierced into his bones. The guy who had been running all the way didn't even have time to make a sound. He fell into the snow and screamed, rolling on the ground. "Great shaman, spare me, spare me." In front of him was a particularly eye-catching black temple amidst the white snow. A calm voice came from the temple, with a hint of helplessness. "Don't pretend. This little bit of cold power can't take your life." The rolling figure thought for a moment and felt that it was indeed a bit too much. Wasn't this just playing tricks on a great shaman? He was startled and quickly got up. He respectfully said, "Yes. Iron Thread, you have caused a big trouble this time. If you are safe, then that's fine. Otherwise, I'm afraid I will have to kill you with my own hands." The middle-aged man called Iron Thread, who came from an extraordinary background, widened his eyes, a look of confusion on his face. I haven't even seen that person. How did I cause trouble?" The great shaman of Meng Mountain didn't explain further. "Go. Tell her to hurry to the Western Wasteland's capital as fast as possible." Space suddenly twisted, wrapping around Iron Thread. He disappeared in a flash. The mountain returned to silence. Only the wind and snow could be heard. Within the Black Temple, there was a light sigh. A storm was brewing. He could only hope that His Majesty could smoothly pass. Otherwise, he could only risk his life to block the 13th floor. Min Shantai woke up in the morning. He felt extremely sleepy, as if he had been fooling around the entire night. After enduring for a long time, he finally fell asleep on the table with a plop sound. The two maids in the study, the scholar and the chess attendant, also fell to the ground as if they were infected. With a creaking sound, the door was pushed open. Masterman walked in. He was frowning and his face was full of misfortune. He first walked to the round table and poured himself a cup of tea. After drinking a few mouthfuls, he found that the tea was too hot. He immediately stuck out his tongue and fanned himself with his hands. "I can't even drink tea. I'm so unlucky," Master Min wailed. He turned around and sat to the side, his face filled with disappointment. He raised his head and glanced at a certain book on the bookshelf. He smiled bitterly and said, "Miss, you've been staying in my silly son's study for so many days. Aren't you going to come out and greet me?" A cloud of smoke gushed out, condensing into the figure of a woman. Her eyes were like limpid autumn waters. She looked over and bowed. "This little girl has been rude. I hope Master doesn't blame me." Lord Min's eyes lit up, and he quickly covered his eyes with his hands. He swallowed his saliva and said loudly, "Miss, you can wear more clothes. I'm old, I really can't stand this." The woman looked down at her half-naked, snow-white breasts. She suddenly laughed and walked over. "Master's really interesting. It's unexpected. However, I came here without an invitation and disturbed the peace of your palace. Master, please take a few glances. Consider this a small token of my gratitude." Pausing for a moment, she took a few steps forward, leaned forward slightly, and said, "Or, Master, you can touch it." Gulp. There was a clear swallowing sound. Lord Min moved his hand away. His Adam's apple bobbed up and down as he stared at the soft, snow-white breasts in front of him. He endured it for several moments, but he really couldn't hold back any longer. He reached out a trembling hand and placed it on the snow-white breasts. "Ah!" The woman screamed out in pain. Her figure flashed, and she instantly appeared behind the desk. She glared at Lord Min. Her eyes were cold and filled with hatred, but there was also a bit of shock and anger that couldn't be concealed. On her chest, there were several bruises and bruises. When contrasted with the surrounding snow-white breasts, it was even more shocking. Lord Min had a calm expression. He slowly withdrew his hand and looked across at the nine-tailed monster fox that was staring at him. "I am indeed lustful, and I like all sorts of beautiful women. If the young ladies outside my courtyard were to deliver themselves to me on their own initiative like you, I wouldn't be polite. I would grab them and rush into bed. But what I like are people. I have no interest in a coquettish fox like you. I was a bit heavy-handed just to teach you a lesson. Don't try to flirt in front of me again, otherwise it won't be so simple next time." The corner of his mouth curled up into a smile. "Do you understand?" The nine-tailed monster fox screamed, "Who are you?" "Your ancestor," Lord Min lightly said. The nine-tailed monster fox clenched her teeth. Blood-red light appeared in the depths of her eyes, and a cruel light surged. She wished she could reveal her true form and tear this old man to pieces. But for some unknown reason, she felt a sense of dread and unease in her heart. She looked down at the bruises on her chest and clenched her teeth. Suddenly, she restrained her anger, and a cloud of mist flashed past. Then, she turned into a calm fairy in white clothes. She faintly smiled and respectfully bowed. "Since Master has spoken, I will do as you say." "Smart." Lord Min revealed a smile. "So, remember your incomparably smart choice today. Don't forget it in the future. For the next few days, you must obediently stay in the book and don't go anywhere. Wait for this storm to pass and then leave." Lord Min stood up and revealed a look of disgust. He looked at the hand that had just grabbed her. "I have to go wash it. Otherwise, this smell is too unbearable." The nine-tailed monster fox watched him leave. Her face was expressionless, but there was a thoughtful look in her eyes. The fox race had always been known for their intelligence. This was something everyone knew. So that fierce and violent display, just now, was just an act. Their goal was to probe. But unfortunately, Lord Min hid his strength and didn't reveal even the slightest bit of his aura. Without a doubt, he was a truly wondrous person. Otherwise, did he really think that just anyone could casually grab her and wound the body of a great monster? After thinking about it again and again, the nine-tailed monster fox took a deep breath. She turned into smoke and returned to the book. The Western Wasteland Imperial race was currently hunting her down, and she hadn't fully recovered from her injuries. She had to stay here and recuperate. As for the future, naturally, it would depend on the situation. If there was a chance, she wouldn't mind turning this house into a sea of fire. Min Xiangtai and the two maids woke up one after the other. They looked at each other, but they only felt that the weather was warm and they were tired. They didn't think too much about it. Looking back at the book that was still on the bookshelf, Min Xiangtai calmed down and smiled. He continued to bury his head in his books. Because the fairy in the book had already promised that as long as he was successful in his studies and obtained scholarly honors, she would consider being his wife for a lifetime and become a celestial couple. Thinking of this, Min Xiangtai felt like his body was filled with endless strength. Wudong Commandery's Li family's old ancestor, Li Zicheng, requested to see the emperor. Because of the contract from back then, the imperial palace had no reason to refuse. Very soon, the palace doors opened. Mother Wu, who had appeared a few times before, respectfully led the way. Li Zicheng looked at her back, a look of surprise on his face. But he seemed to have thought of something and didn't say anything in the end. The journey was smooth. Mother Wu stopped outside the longevity hall and turned around. "Ancestor Li, His Majesty is waiting for you in the hall." She was well-mannered, and her expression was calm. Li Zicheng cupped his hands together. "Thank you." He glanced at the cold and sharp old woman and stepped into the hall. "Ancestor Li, we haven't seen each other for 1,000 years, right?" His Majesty's laughter rang out, making one feel as if they were bathing in a spring breeze. The conversation ended on a happy note. The great emperor had clearly expressed his support for the Li family old ancestor's proposal to investigate the murder of Li Cangzhou. Li Zicheng was satisfied. The two sides spoke about Wudong County and the Li family of the Central Wasteland Divine Prefecture. Then, old ancestor Li stood up and bid his farewells. The great emperor personally stood up to send him off. Li Zicheng smiled and declined, saying that His Majesty didn't need to do this. But he still allowed him to walk out of the hall. "Your Majesty, please stop. Otherwise, I really won't dare to come to the Imperial Palace again." The great emperor smiled and nodded. "That's fine. Then I ask Mother Wu to send Ancestor Li out on my behalf. As I said, if there is anything you need from the Imperial family, Ancestor Li can ask." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Old Ancestor Li cupped his hands together. Mother Wu bowed to His Majesty and accepted the order. She gestured with her hand. "Ancestor Li, please." Old Ancestor Li nodded. The two of them walked out of the Imperial Palace, one in front and one behind. Standing at the entrance of the hall, the great emperor looked at the backs of the two people and sighed. He said in a soft voice, I really want to cut off that old thing's head so he can open his eyes wide and understand the dignity of a ruler." Behind him, a young eunuch slowly walked out. He said in a soft voice, "Your Majesty, please bear with it. Wudong County's Leaf family isn't much, but there is still a chess piece for others. If you touch them, there will be trouble." "That's right, so I have to bear with it." The Western Wasteland Great Emperor looked up at the imperial palace. A cold smile appeared on his face. "In your own home, if you have to bear with outsiders, then you simply aren't strong enough. Otherwise, who would dare say anything when you punch out? I want to be the first person in Huangzhou to punch out, but there are mountains on my back, and there's a stinking swamp under my feet. I don't know when I can clean up the situation." The young eunuch was silent for a moment. He said, "As long as your Majesty has the heart and works hard, there will be a day when your wish will be achieved." The great emperor turned around and pointed at the young eunuch. He laughed and scolded. "You old thing, you said that not long after I ascended the throne, and you still say it now. But I'm no longer the young man in the past. I don't have so much patience and time." The great emperor waved his hand as if to sweep away the depression and dissatisfaction in his heart. He took the initiative to change the topic. "How was the investigation going?" The young eunuch said, "It has been investigated." Li Zhongzhou entered the imperial capital from Xuanjin sect and then went directly to Zhongwuho Mansion. This matter has been revealed by Yuan Yibo, the defending general. The great emperor frowned. "This name sounds familiar." The young eunuch said, "He is one of the candidates chosen by your Majesty in the early years of your ascension to the throne. But because of an accident, he has been useless since then." The great emperor's expression was calm. He said lightly, "As expected, even I have times where I make mistakes. So, when you have the chance, you might as well take a look. As for things like faith and trust, they're the things that the great emperor should not have." The young eunuch was convinced. He bowed and said, "Your Majesty is right." Outside the imperial palace, Li Ziqing wanted to say something, but stopped. Mother Wu said lightly, "Ancestrally, take care." She turned and left. Looking at her back, Li Ziqing's eyes showed a trace of complexity. He sighed and left. Without any warning, the murder of the Wutong County's Li clan's disciple was like a large stone that smashed into the deep pool that was the imperial capital. It shocked countless bastards, big and small, and they all opened their eyes, thinking about what mysteries were behind this matter. After all, Li Ziqing came to the imperial capital personally. This alone was enough to show that this matter was not ordinary. Everyone was waiting for the follow-up news to come. So, when Xuanjin sect's General Yuan Yibo was taken away by the Ministry of Justice for questioning, the matter of his death being taken over by a magpie's nest and entering the imperial capital was confirmed. Soon, a heavy piece of news followed. Li Zhongzhou, who was taken over by the magpie's nest, entered the imperial capital and only went to one place in the city. Then he quickly left the imperial capital. The follow-up traces were still being investigated. But now, no one had too much time to pay attention to it, because the place Li Zhongzhou went to was the Zhongwu Marquis mansion. In recent years, the most prominent and eye-catching person in the Western Wasteland Empire was undoubtedly this newly promoted Marquis. Not to mention the shocking speed of his rise, he quickly became an important general of the Empire's military. Even a rumor in the imperial capital spread the reputation of General Jin Wu Ning far and wide. More and more people dared to provoke him. The dignified Yi family, one of the two mountains in the military, was despised and suppressed by the emperor clans. This was the root cause. For a moment, countless eyes gathered, waiting for the next development of the matter. The Wutong County's Li family's background, heritage, and strength might be shrouded in fog, but the nobles in the court were well aware of it. If the Zhongwu Marquis was really involved in the matter of killing the Li family's Li family, then this matter would become even more lively. Chapter 1585. Li Ziqing once again entered the palace to meet with the emperor. He said that this matter involved a general of the Western Desolation Army, and that he needed the emperor's permission before he could go deeper. Disregarding everything else, the great emperor still enjoyed this superficial attitude. He immediately declared, "Ancestor Li, rest assured that I will immediately order for General Jinwu Ningqin to come to the imperial palace." But soon, news came back that Marquis Zhongwu Ningqin had gone into seclusion a few days ago and had yet to come out. The great emperor patted his forehead and smiled. "I was confused. A few days ago, Marquis Zhongwu came to the imperial palace and asked me for a few treasures. He said that he had reached a bottleneck in his cultivation and would try to use external forces to break through his current realm. I think that's it." Li Zicheng frowned slightly. He thought for a moment and said, "Your Majesty, this old man naturally believes you. But this old man earnestly requests that your Majesty allow me to personally make a trip to the loyal Marshal Marquis estate. I guarantee that I won't do anything drastic, or I'm willing to accept His Majesty's thunderous punishment." The great emperor smiled and waved his hand. "I trust Ancestor Li. If you want to go, then go." "Thank you, Your Majesty." Li Zicheng bid farewell and left. The Li family of Wudong County is indeed extraordinary. You said that you trust me, but you still want to take a look, and you want me to personally agree. The great emperor said softly, his eyes deep. A feminine voice sounded. "Why don't I make a trip and accompany Ancestor Li to the loyal Marquis estate?" The great emperor shook his head. "No need. Now is not the time for you to be exposed." A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. "Furthermore, I really want to know what that old fool Li Zicheng wants to do. This was the imperial capital, and he was the emperor of the West Baron. As long as he was on the throne, he could control the fate of the entire country. It was one thing for them to be fine, but if they really broke the rules, did they really think that he, the emperor of the world, would not dare to kill them?" Li Zicheng was very efficient. He left the large palace and boarded the carriage. He ordered indifferently, "To the loyal Marshal Marquis Manor." He turned around, and the carriage behind him followed. In the carriage, Li Ge held his sword with both hands and sat upright, as if he did not care about his surroundings at all. In the opposite corner, Chun Shanglu's face was pale. He clenched his fists tightly within his robe sleeves and coughed from time to time with his head lowered. Li Ruhua opened her eyes. Li Ge. Her eyes were bright, revealing a faint majesty. Li Ge frowned slightly. He still did not open his eyes, but the formless sword intent around him slowly disappeared. Chun Shanglu let out a deep breath and cupped his hands together. "Immortal Master Li's swordsmanship is divine. I truly admire you." Li Ge did not respond at all. Chun Shanglu was not annoyed either. He cupped his fists at Li Ruhua to express his gratitude. Li Ruhua smiled, glanced at him, and did not speak again. The carriage fell into silence once again. Fortunately, the imperial palace wasn't far from the eastern city where the vermilion flowers gathered. The carriage soon stopped. Li Ge opened his eyes and was the first to push the door open. Li Ruhua took 2 steps and turned around. "Chun Shanglu, do you want to come with us?" Chun Shanglu shook his head. Without the slightest hesitation, he said, "I will be in the carriage waiting for Immortal Master and Fairy Maiden to return." Li Ruhua looked at him with admiration. She nodded and got out of the car. Li Ge stood outside the car, not afraid that Chun Shanglu would hear him. "You should know your place. Don't have any thoughts that you shouldn't have." Li Ruhua smiled brightly. "What did you say? I don't understand." "It's best if you don't understand." Li Zicheng walked over. The two didn't speak anymore, bowing at the same time. "Old ancestor, cough. This is the Zhongwu Marquis Manor. His Majesty has already allowed us to personally pay a visit. You two come with me." The Wudong Commandery's Li family had come to visit. The gatekeeper did not dare to delay and quickly ran to report. True Saint Baiyu was in the manor today, but whether it was his status or cultivation, he was clearly not qualified to personally receive the Li family's old ancestor. The general was in seclusion, and he didn't dare to disturb the great-grandmother in the backyard. As he was anxiously pulling at his hair, Little Meat had already arrived in the front yard. She glanced at him and said, "What are you standing there for? Open the door and welcome the guests." Her tone was unkind, but True Saint Baiyu relaxed and revealed a happy expression. with this great-grandmother personally appearing. A great figure like the Lee family's old ancestor seemed to suddenly become ordinary. The beating heart in his chest immediately calmed down. He cupped his hands together and said, "Yes, I will go now." With his head held high and his chest puffed out, he walked to the main entrance and bowed towards the three people of the Lee family. "General Jinwoo by you greets the old ancestor and the two little immortals. My family's general is in seclusion, and the madam heard that the three of you have come to visit, so she ordered me to invite you in." His response was flawless. For better or worse, he was from a branch family of the Emperor clans, the nephew of the sky-bearing king, and a true noble young master of the imperial capital. With such confidence in his heart, his actions were calm and composed. Li Ziqing nodded. "Thank you. I don't dare. Ancestor Li and the two little immortals, please." Bai Yu turned and led the way. The main hall of the manor, the reception hall. Little Meat sat on the main seat. Her eyelids opened and closed. She lightly said, "My family's marquis is in seclusion. As a woman, I shouldn't casually show my face in public. But the one who has come is Ancestor Li, so I can only put up a front. I ask that you don't take offense." Just looking at the words, it wasn't very polite, but it was still within the bounds of etiquette. But coming from Lil Meat's mouth, there really wasn't much respect. Adding on the fact that she didn't respond at all in her, but didn't leave her seat, it was already clear that she didn't care about the person who had come. Li Ziqing's eyes suddenly surged with anger. The Wutong Commandery's Li family had always had a transcendent status in the Western wilderness. Although they had always behaved themselves these past few years and tried to reduce their contact with the outside world, who wouldn't lower themselves when they saw someone from the Li family. Moreover, it was him, the dignified ancestor of the Li family, who had personally come. Even the Western wilderness great emperor had to be polite. With a single thought, he could interfere with the outside world. The air suddenly froze. The faces of the maids serving here were all pale. They felt as if they had fallen into a swamp, unable to move. Even breathing was difficult. Bai Yu, who was guarding outside the door, had a slight change in expression. Then, he immediately calmed down. Firstly, Li Ziqing didn't go too far, only limiting his aura within the hall. Secondly, this pressure, this feeling, it was far from the madams. He wasn't worried at all. Little Meat coldly laughed. "Ancestor Li, this isn't Wudong Commandery. As a guest, you can't bully the host family just because of your cultivation." She straightened her body. Her young face was solemn and oppressive. "Before you came, you should have heard that the marquis of my family is cultivating in seclusion. Apart from this, I won't hide it from you. There is an artifact that is being refined in the cauldron. If my marquis's cultivation is affected because of you, or if that artifact is damaged, Ancestor Li, are you sure you can bear the corresponding consequences?" When she opened her mouth and said the first sentence, the pressure that enveloped the hall was swept away. At this moment, her gaze covered Li Ziqing. It actually caused this old monster with unfathomable cultivation to feel uneasy from the bottom of her heart. Li Ruhua suddenly took a step forward and cupped her hands. "The Wutong Commandery's Li family has indeed been disrespectful. I hope Madam doesn't take offense." Little Meat glanced at her. Her eyes were calm, but it caused her heart to palpitate. She suddenly felt a strong sense of unease. 2 days ago, the one who was spying on us from outside the manor should have been you. Alarm bells sounded in Li Ruhua's heart, but her expression remained calm. She smiled and said, "It was indeed me. Madam's methods are excellent. This junior admires you to the extreme." Little Meat waved her hand. "Don't call yourself junior. Between the two of us, it isn't certain who is older." Of course, this was purely referring to the age of this mortal body. But Little Meat spoke with confidence and confidence. It was clear that she had successfully misled them. Li Ruhua's eyes flashed, revealing a thoughtful look. Without waiting for her to think further, Little Meat said, "Our manor knows about the murder. But no matter whether you believe it or not, this matter has nothing to do with the Marquis." Li Ruhua said in a soft voice, "We are willing to believe, madam, but everything needs evidence. It isn't good to make empty promises. That's right. Then let's stop here for today. When my marquis comes out of seclusion, you can come again. Little Meat ordered them to leave. Li Ziqing's expression became uglier. Little Meat glanced at him. You're already so old, and yet you still can't understand your own position. Look at this little girl. She hasn't even expressed anything. As she spoke, she looked at the silent Li Ge. The sword in your hand is indeed good, but I have seen even better swords. Moreover, sword cultivators ultimately cultivate themselves. There is no future for them to rely on external strength. Schwa, Li Ge fiercely looked up, a divine light surging in his eyes. It was like invisible swords were circling around him, ready to howl out at any moment. Little Meat seemed interested. Her lips curled up in a smile. Not convinced. You could try. I will sit here without moving. If you can harm me in the least, consider yourself fierce. Li Ge. Li Ruhua frowned and shouted out loud. Li Ge took a deep breath. He closed his eyes and opened them again. The sword intent around him was completely restrained. He turned and left. Li Ruhua revealed a smile. Madam, we will disturb you again in the future. While it couldn't be considered a tense confrontation, it was certain that they would part on bad terms. True Saint Bai too saw the three people from the Li family leave. His back became even straighter. He didn't think that there was anything wrong with his madam's actions. You people said that you came to pay a visit, but this matter has already spread throughout the imperial capital. You said that our general killed a junior of your Li family. Wasn't this clearly making us enemies? Of course, there was no need to be polite. Moreover, the madam was indeed fierce. Even though the Li family had an old ancestor and two extraordinary little immortal masters, she still held the upper hand, suppressing them from start to finish. Ancestor Li, little immortal masters, take care. Bai Tu cupped his hands together, neither servile nor overbearing. Humph! Li Ziqing coldly coughed and stepped onto the carriage first. Li Ge and Li Ruhua entered the carriage behind and left. Is it her? Li Ge suddenly asked. Li Ruhua thought for a moment and shook her head. I cannot be sure, but I cannot see through this, madam. She paused, a dignified look on her face. In fact, if she wasn't in front of me, I wouldn't be able to confirm that she was sitting there. Li Ge said in a low voice, my sword can't lock onto her at all. The two youths who came from the central wasteland divine continent, who had pushed through realms and looked down on everyone, felt a sense of dread from the bottom of their hearts. The insignia, General Ningqin, had even more secrets hidden on his body. His madam was actually such an unfathomable character. But like this, the possibility that he was the new king of the barbarians was greatly reduced. The reason was simple. If General Jinwu really was the new king of the barbarians, he wouldn't have dared to act so recklessly. They didn't believe that Little Meat's actions today were all her own decision. She must have communicated with General Jinwu ahead of time. The carriage fell silent. The two young Li family powerhouses fell in a deep thought. Chun Shangolv suddenly said, Immortal Master, Fairy Maiden, although I don't know what you are doing, now that things have come to this, I fear it will not be easy to retreat. Humph! Li Ge coldly sneered. Chun Shangolv spat out a mouthful of blood, his face pale. Put away your thoughts, or I will kill you right now. Li Ruhua had a calm expression. Li Ge, Chun Shangolv is right. Although you and I hid our identities and came to Wudong County's Li family, I fear this matter cannot be hidden from the Western Wasteland. We don't care about Wudong County's face, but you and I cannot lose face for our family. Otherwise, there will be trouble. Li Ge said, if it weren't for this, he would already be dead. Li Ruhua smiled. Interesting. I haven't seen him yet, but I am a little curious about Marquis Ningqin. Even if he isn't the person you and I are looking for, I still feel that there must be some relationship between the two of us. This isn't a supernatural ability, but my intuition. Believe me, sometimes a woman's intuition, especially one that hasn't left home yet, is so accurate that it makes one sigh in admiration. She glanced at Chun Shangolv. He had his head lowered, coughing nonstop. Drops of blood seeped out from the corners of his mouth. Marquis Zhongwu Manor. After sending away a group of maids who looked at her with starry eyes, Little Meat coldly sneered. You two little things want to play tricks with me? You are far too lacking. Comparing intuition, biting onto something, and not letting go. No matter, let's continue. The main event hasn't arrived yet. She took a step forward, and her figure vanished from sight. Chapter 1586. Master Min let out a long sigh. His face was gloomy. These 2 days, he did not even have the energy to enter the residence's new concubine's door. All day long, he held a wine pot in his hand and drank 2 mouthfuls, muttering to himself, I'm sitting at home, and the pot falls from the sky. This is really bad luck. It's not that bad. Otherwise, I wouldn't have appeared here. A voice suddenly rang out behind him. Lord Min's face stiffened. He put down the wine jug and turned around. He saw a beautiful lady sitting in the pavilion. She looked delicate and timid, but the look in her eyes made him feel as if he were in a sea of fire and a mountain of daggers, as if he could be consigned to eternal damnation at any moment. Gulp! Old Master Min swallowed his saliva and bowed with a pale face. Min Zhongjing greets Fairy. I wonder if you... Meaty flicked her fingernails. If you say any more nonsense, I won't be polite anymore. I'll make a move and beat your true body out. Old Master Min had a bitter look on his face. Fairy, spare me. Meaty said, I'm going to tell you something. Once you've done it, we'll pretend we've never met. Following that, only her lips could be seen moving, but not the slightest sound could be heard. Understood? Old Master Min coughed lightly. Fairy, I made a vow many years ago. Today I betrayed Nine-Tailed. I really can't get over this. It's better for you to die than for me. Don't you understand this logic? Moreover, didn't you say that the world is one big family? Old Master Min's face was full of helplessness. I didn't say that. Little Meat sneered. I don't care about that. You have 2 choices. Either do as I say, or I'll kill you right now. With a long sigh, Lord Min stood up and bowed. Everything is as Fairy has said. Little Meat snapped her fingers. Very good. She got up and walked away. As soon as her feet touched the ground, she disappeared. Old Master Min looked at the empty space and frowned. He slowly sat down and reached for the wine pot. He tilted his head back and took a sip. Unfortunately, his aim was not very good. The wine didn't enter his mouth. Instead, he used it to wash his face. He shivered on the spot. Hoochie, hoochie, he gasped for breath. His cold sweat was like a breached dam. He didn't even have time to wipe it off. Soon, the sweat soaked through his robe and stuck to his skin. Lowering his head to look at himself, who was trembling like a pendulum, Old Man Min let out a bitter laugh. He really did not expect to meet such a terrifying existence. He seemed to be struggling and hesitant when he was dealing with her earlier, but that was all an act. The moment he saw little flesh, he almost knelt down on the spot. It couldn't be helped. Who asked him to be born with good eyesight? Selling out the 9-tailed demon fox was indeed a breach of the oath he had sworn. However, this little girl was courting death by provoking such a powerful figure. It was better for her to be killed as soon as possible. Otherwise, there was no telling when the entire demon race would be wiped out. That was definitely the right word to use. As long as that woman wished it, all the demons in the world would be slaughtered. Min Chongjing did not doubt this at all. After all, he had once peeped at the peak of the mountain from afar. However, why did this matter involve the Wutong Commandery's Li family? His thoughts raced. He thought back to the recent case of a Li family disciple being killed in the imperial capital. Min Chongjing's eyes widened, and he subconsciously looked towards a place in the eastern part of the city. Little thing, you are quite smart. But the more you are like this, the more delicious your brain is. Do you want to know how I know this? A cold sneer sounded out in his mind. Min Chongjing fell to his knees, not daring to speak or move. Humph! A terrifying aura slowly retreated. After a long time, Old Man Min stood up. He took a deep breath to calm his mind and walked outside. Outside a small pavilion in the courtyard, there were several beautiful maids. The steward, who had always been a trusted aide of the Old Man Min, also had a worried look on his face. Outside, As the maid saw the old man walk out, they all hurriedly bowed. They had been here just now, but they had been completely unaware of what had happened in the pavilion. "Steward, hasn't the great-uncle's birthday invitation been delivered?" Asked Min Shantai to go immediately and prepare a generous gift. The steward looked hesitant. He first bowed to accept the order, then said, "Old master, there is still half a month to great-uncle's birthday. Should we let young master go now?" Old man Min said lightly, "Since he has been enlightened and is really ready to study, a great scholar like great-uncle is the best teacher. Let him study for a period of time." After a pause, his voice became colder. "Tell Min Shantai that if he dares not to go, I will break his legs." The steward turned around and left. He was quite puzzled. His old master occasionally mentioned great-uncle and usually mocked him as a pedantic scholar. Why did he take the initiative to ask young master to study? Moreover, those who knew the old master's temperament knew that he was at his most serious. He didn't look too strict at this moment. Min Shantai made a fuss for a while and was pulled back by the old steward. He whispered something in his ear. His face gradually showed a struggle. Then he smiled bitterly. "Uncle Wang, you go out first. I need to pack my things." The steward heaved a sigh of relief and said softly, "I will wait for you outside. Young master, hurry up." A moment later, Min Shantai changed his clothes and walked out with a listless expression. The fairy maiden had told him that this residence was a land of fortune. This was why she was born from a book and couldn't easily leave, otherwise there was a chance that she would disappear. Min Shantai couldn't bear to see the fairy maiden that he missed so much suffer. He immediately said that he would come quickly and that the fairy maiden would wait for him in peace. The carriage left the residence and headed towards great-uncle's house. Outside the main entrance, the owner of a breakfast shop greeted him with a smile. "Young master, are you going out?" Min Shantai braced himself and cupped his hands together. "It is great-uncle's birthday. The old master asked me to go. You're busy." The boss smiled and nodded. When the carriage was far away, he wiped his hands and took off the apron tied around his waist. He handed it to his daughter behind him. "Little girl, there aren't many customers right now. Look after the stall for a while. I have something to do and need to go home." He rubbed his belly. The father and daughter already had a tacit understanding. His daughter smiled and nodded. After greeting several customers, the boss walked toward his house. It wasn't too far away, just behind the residence. In the endless barbarian territory, west of Hungshan Mountain, strong winds howled. Apart from a slightly fishy smell, there was also a slightly cloying sweetness. At this time, a figure standing atop a boulder was frowning. A cold light flowed in his eyes. Behind the boulder, there was a wretched-looking man lying on the ground. His hands tightly grasped onto a depression in the boulder, and he cried out, "It's true, I didn't lie to you. When the great shaman sent me here, he personally told me, let's hurry and leave. If we're too late, the great shaman will definitely be the first to kill me." Without waiting for a response, the man cried out even louder, "Mother, your son is about to die. I won't be able to show filial piety to you in the future. Mother, take good care of yourself. Wife, I can never go back. You are still young. In the future, you can find a man who treats you well. But don't let our children suffer. They're the flesh of my heart. Little sister, shut up." The man instantly fell silent. He lifted a hand to wipe away the few drops of tears that he squeezed out. Then he looked up. Thump, thump. In the distance, in the boundless sea region, the sound of drums echoed out once more. Shwa, a dazzling white beam of light shot into the skies. The man cried out miserably and hurriedly covered his eyes. This time, he had really suffered a bit. It wasn't too much nor too little. Now his eyes had turned blood red. Tears tumbled down, mixing with the faint color of blood. In the next moment, the man was lifted up. A strong wind blew against him, causing his face to tremble. "Can he really save me?" Woo-woo-woo, woo-woo-woo-woo, woo-woo-woo-woo. The man cried out, but before he could say a single word, his voice was forced back into his stomach by the wind. The person who had transformed into a sword shadow actually understood what he was saying. He sneered. If he can save me, then what does it matter if I agree to his conditions? But if he's playing a joke on me, then he's dead. The man held his head in his hands and curled up into a ball. He felt as if his entire body would be torn apart by the violent air currents. He thought that it was hard to say whether Marquis Zhongwu would die or not. But if things continued like this, he feared he would die first. Whoosh! A boundless sword light howled through the skies. Its speed was as fast as thunder, disappearing without a trace. Little Meaty suddenly looked up towards the west. Her eyebrows arched up, a bit of surprise in her eyes. But that was it. In this world, there weren't many existences that could arouse her attention, and there were even fewer that were worthy of her attention. But now there was an exception. Little Meaty drew back her gaze and frowned. She looked towards Qin Yu's seclusion room. This boy, his tenacity isn't bad. Moreover, his cultivation background is much deeper than I imagined. But now isn't the time to make a breakthrough. I have to suppress it for a bit. Little Meaty picked up a teacup and took a sip before putting it down. With a light pop, she had already vanished from where she stood. In the next moment, she appeared in front of Qin Yu. The seclusion room was filled with an obscure and shaking aura. Shwa. Qin Yu opened his eyes and stared at Little Meaty in front of him. His withered lips moved, and his voice was hoarse like rusty iron slowly rubbing against each other. You came? I originally thought that you would feel a bit guilty seeing me like this, but it seems that I was thinking too much. Little Meaty coughed. Qin Yu, it is said that only those who suffer the most hardship can rise above others. That's right. So, I really must thank you, Qin Yu said earnestly. Little Meaty felt a bit guilty, but the aura that flooded the room indicated that her breakthrough was imminent. There was no time for her to hesitate. Qin Yu, since you already know, I won't explain anything to you. In short, now isn't the best time to make a breakthrough, so you'll have to hold it in for a bit longer. Believe me, it won't be too long. At most, you will experience a little more tempering, but your own safety won't be a problem. So let's agree on this. She stepped forwards and placed a finger between Qin Yu's eyebrows. Like a pot of boiling water, she sealed off the only outlet. In the blink of an eye, Qin Yu's face flushed red. His eyes widened as he looked at Little Meaty. He wanted to speak, but as soon as he opened his mouth, he let out a pitiful scream. She understood Qin Yu's temperament and knew just what it would feel like to make him scream on the spot. Little Meaty felt a bit uncomfortable as he stared at her with his bloodshot eyes. She coughed and ran away. Hold on for a bit longer. Cough, cough, then I'll leave first. Shwa. She turned and vanished. Little Meaty, Qin Yu's suppressed roars echoed out from his seclusion chamber. Hiss! He sat back down in his chair and picked up a cup of tea, drinking it all in one gulp. He didn't seem to quench his thirst, so he picked up the teapot and gulped it down, not caring at all that the tea was scalding hot. This time, was Qin Yu really angry? Thinking about it, anyone who had suffered the pain of being skin alive and had just managed to free themselves would be kicked back into a pot of boiling oil. They would likely gnash their teeth in hatred. But this old lady was really doing this for your own good. If you make a breakthrough now, you won't be able to obtain those benefits in the future. Little Meaty had a helpless expression. She rubbed her temples, cursing inwardly. This was really a dog biting Lu Dongbin. On the other side, she was also annoyed at her current state. Qin Yu, just who the hell are you? Chapter 1587. Within Min Xiangtai's study, the two maids were dismissed. Min Changjing sat down and drank tea. Wisps of mist flew out from the heaven-shrouding book. The nine-tailed monster fox wore a white dress and bowed. This little monster greets master. May I ask why you have come today? Her expression was calm, and her eyes were filled with confusion. But underneath that expression was fear and vigilance. Min Changjing sighed and put down the teacup. There has been a change in the situation. I sent Min Xiangtai away to explain things to you. The nine-tailed monster fox didn't say anything. Master, please speak. Min Changjing said, You can't continue hiding in my house. The Western Wasteland has already detected some traces of this heaven-shrouding book. The nine-tailed monster fox frowned. She looked up and a cold smile appeared on her face. Master, are you bullying this little monster for being ignorant? Heaven's Shrouding Book is a divine item of my monster race. Even if it is in the Western Wasteland's capital, how could it be exposed? Moreover, with you here, it is even easier to hide from the heavens. Min Chongjing looked at her and lightly said, I am willing to explain things to you, but don't think that I have the responsibility to protect you. This is a different concept. You must understand. He took another sip of tea and put it down. The nine-tailed monster fox's heart chilled. There was even more fear in the depths of her eyes. Heaven's Shrouding Book itself cannot be detected by the Western Wasteland. But someone knows that I have this book. You caused too much of a commotion that day. His Majesty in the Imperial Palace ordered us to find you. Although he feels like a clay bodhisattva crossing a river, as long as he doesn't abdicate, he will still be the Western Wasteland's emperor. My family has lived peacefully in the imperial capital for many years. We won't break the peace just because of you. So, I'll let you leave Heaven's Shrouding Book. The nine-tailed monster fox didn't believe these words because it didn't matter if they were true or false. Her expression was cold. If I leave the Heaven's Shrouding Book, I will soon be exposed. As Master said, the Western Wasteland won't let me go. Since I know the consequences, I won't easily leave. In this world, even the fox race that wasn't skilled in direct combat still had the confidence of a great monster. Although she couldn't see through the old man in front of her, who seemed to be ordinary to the naked eye, she wouldn't do something like waiting for death to come. Min Chongjing lightly said, I'm letting you go, not forcing you to die. Otherwise, I wouldn't have tacitly allowed you to stay at home. I still owe the monster race. People from the Li family of Wudong Commandery have arrived in the imperial capital. Although you are hiding in Shrouding Heaven, the essence chi of Shu and Chi has been consumed by you. You should know about these things. Min Zhongjing glanced at her and continued in an indifferent tone. Of course, this is just a small matter. It's normal for demons to eat humans, so I'm not angry about it. To put it simply, those two juniors of the Wudong County's Li clan are from the Li clan of the Central Desolate Divine Prefecture. The nine-tailed fox's eyes lit up. Min Chongjing said, Do you understand what I mean? As long as you secretly obtain the protection of the Li family, you will naturally be able to leave the Western Wasteland safely. You might even be able to obtain another fortune. The nine-tailed fox thought for a moment and respectfully bowed. Thank you, Master, but I need to confirm something. So, please allow me to use this Shrouding Heaven manual for 2 days. Min Chongjing coldly sneered. Fox, it seems that I was too easy to talk to today, causing you to lose your sense of propriety. The Shrouding Heaven manual is mine, and you can't take it away. At most, I can lend you a shadow that can protect you for 2 days. If you don't agree, then think of a way yourself. The nine-tailed fox lightly smiled and bowed. Then we will do as Master says. Soon, a white shadow flashed in the residence. The nine-tailed fox revealed her true form and disappeared into the distance. This was because the shadow of the Shrouding Heaven manual had covered it up. It concealed itself within, isolating its own aura. Master Min stood outside the study, holding the Shrouding Heaven manual. It seemed to be much more worn down than before. He looked down and revealed a cold smile. Then, he immediately calmed down. Your Majesty, Zhongwu Marquis Manor has sent a secret letter. Eunuch Wei Ming knelt on the ground and respectfully presented the jade slip with both hands. Behind the bead curtains, the great emperor's eyes flashed. Bring it here. Yes. Wei Ming carefully walked up from the side and placed the jade slip on the table. He stood up and bowed once more. Then, he left the study. The great emperor picked up the jade slip and probed it with his divine sense. In the next moment, his eyes brightened and a sharp light surged within them. Ha! The jade slip shattered. A faintly discernible shadow appeared in the great emperor's hand. His eyes became increasingly cold. That clan? In the hall, a surprised voice sounded out. The young eunuch walked out from the shadows. The great emperor lightly said, It was sent from Zhongwu Marquis Manor. It is said that they captured a trace of aura from the dead Li Sangzhou. The young eunuch thought for a moment. Your Majesty cannot easily believe this. The great emperor narrowed his eyes. I can choose not to believe it, but the aura of that clan cannot be faked. Things are becoming more and more interesting. Although he said it was interesting, his words were filled with boiling, killing intent. He thought of Wudong Commandery's Leaf family, and even the central desolate Divine Continent's Leaf family, as well as the nine-tailed fox that appeared in the imperial capital. He always felt that there were some secrets hidden within, and whether it was that clan or the Leaf family, it wasn't easy to move against them right now. The only breakthrough point was that nine-tailed fox. The great emperor took a deep breath. Li Zhouqing, I will give you 3 more days. You must find the whereabouts of that nine-tailed fox. The young eunuch hadn't been called by his true name for many years. He furrowed his eyebrows, and pain flashed in his eyes, but he soon composed himself. He bowed and said, Yes, your Majesty. Wudong Commandery's Leaf family lived in their fiefdom all year round and rarely sent their clansmen out. But in the imperial capital, they also had a luxurious residence that was comparable to a noble lord's. Li Ziqing arrived at the imperial capital and naturally moved in. This residence that had been cold for many years suddenly became lively. Although there weren't any ministers of the court that openly expressed their closeness, the number of people that came in from the back door of the residence and left after placing down their gifts was truly astonishing. After all, this was the Leaf family before the nation's surname. The Leaf family had been in harmony with each other for so many years, and the meaning behind this was profound. It indeed had the qualifications for people to place their bets on them. It wasn't that they needed to obtain something now, but that they needed to leave behind some kinship so that they could negotiate in the future. Young ancestors, that woman from the Zhongwu Marquis Manor is truly despicable. I will immediately send word to Wudong Commandery and have the other 2 clansmen of the same realm come over. She must pay the price. Li Ziqing said lowly, his voice cold. Li Gu was expressionless. After leaving the Zhongwu Marquis Manor, he had been frowning as if thinking about something. Li Ruhua smiled faintly and waved her hand. No need to trouble yourself. That woman is not to be trifled with. We won't clash with her. She's a tough nut to crack, and we can leave it to the western wilderness. Li Ziqing bowed. Young ancestors are magnanimous. After saying a few more words, he stood up and bid farewell. When he left the courtyard the 2 were in, his expression returned to normal. Old monsters that had lived for countless years, even if they were from the Wudong Commandery's Leaf family, to be able to cultivate to the peak of the ruler realm and be only half a step away from the emperor realm meant that they were intelligent people. How could they be so frivolous because of such a small matter? Making a big fuss was more of a show for the 2 youths of the family to express their attitude. As for that woman from the Zhongwu Marquis Manor, she was absolutely unfathomable. It would be best if they didn't clash with her. Li Ge glanced in the direction that Li Ziqing left in. Old thing, if we really let him fight, he will be the first to retreat. Li Ruhua smiled. He is just taking the opportunity to express his stance in front of us. It's not a big deal to leave a good impression. She looked over, still smiling, but her eyes were serious. You, on the other hand, don't seem to be in a good state right now. It's just a few words. Why would your sword heart waver? Li Ge furrowed his eyebrows. After a moment of silence, he said, I'm fine. Li Ruhua nodded. That's good. Go back and rest well. Li Ge stood up and left. Li Ruhua's expression wasn't relaxed as she looked at his back. She lowered her head and spread out her fingers, looking at the red spot on her palm. Go, investigate that madam from the Zhongwu Marquis Manor. I want all information about her. When he returned to his dwelling, there was the cry of a sword. A thick sword intent flowed out like waves, isolating the entire room from the outside world and forming a quiet place similar to a small world. Li Ge sat down cross-legged, the long sword resting on his legs. He looked down at the sword blade, and little Meaty's words echoed in his mind. A sword cultivator ultimately cultivated themselves. There was no future in relying on external help. He had studied the sword since he was a child, and his talent was extraordinary. He was publicly recognized as a potential sword immortal in his clan, and his future was limitless. All along, he had been instilled with the idea that the sword in his hand was his life, the most important thing in the life of a sword cultivator. Only by finding a sword that truly suited him could he become one with the sword and pursue the supreme sword path. But today, someone had told him that there was no future in relying on external help. This was a fundamental rejection of the sword cultivator philosophy that Li Ge had always held on to. It could be said that Li Ge came from a good background and his cultivation had been smooth sailing. He hadn't experienced too many setbacks, but his sword heart had always been firm. He wouldn't waver just because of a few words from others. But that woman, in front of Li Ji's eyes, little Misty seemed to sit on the upper hand, looking down at him with a condescending gaze. Her words seemed to be true. There was no reason. This thought drilled out from the depths of his heart, becoming increasingly strong and tumbling. Li Ge stuffily coughed, and his complexion paled. At this moment, the long sword resting on his legs began to vibrate. Shwa! He fiercely looked up. The long sword left its sheath and came slashing down, its speed as fast as lightning. Shallow cracks appeared in space. "Get out here!" A snow-white figure flashed out from behind the bed. Then, mist rose up and turned into a woman. Seeing her, Li Ge frowned. He raised his sword and said, "Nine-tailed monster fox." Nine-tailed fox clans, Su Yin greets the sword immortal of the central wasteland divine continent's Li clan. Her eyes were cold as she respectfully bowed. Li Ji's tone was indifferent. "What are you doing here?" The nine-tailed fox, Su Yin, said in a soft voice. "I was hiding in the western wasteland's imperial capital. After completing my tribulation and breaking through, I lost control of my mind, causing my true body to appear and provoking trouble. I am now being hunted down by the western wasteland. Today, I came to find Sword Immortal in hopes that Sword Immortal will save me. In the future, Su Yin is willing to serve by your side as repayment." Repayment? Li Ge was expressionless. Based on what? Su Yin looked up. "Nine-tailed monster fox. My realm is comparable to that of a heavenly demon, and I could transform into a myriad of forms." As she spoke, her appearance changed. Her eyes turned icy cold, and she looked at him aggressively. "Li Ge, do you want to die?" Li Ge was silent for several breaths of time. Then he said in a low voice, "Come here." Chapter 1588. Li Ruhua gave the order to investigate all information about the madam of the Zhongwu Marquis Manor. And before her, someone had already done so. The Western Wasteland Intelligence Agency had been operating for many years and could already investigate the entire world. Even the fallen demonic sect had spies placed within it. Soon, all the information regarding Misty was sorted out, filtered, summarized, and sent into the Imperial Palace through secret channels. I can allow General Jinwu to keep some secrets, but these secrets must be within a controllable range. The Great Emperor had a faint expression. He placed down the jade slip containing the information. His expression was calm, and his eyes surged with a firm will that could not be questioned. The sky-bearing monarch bowed. "Your Majesty, I haven't found anything wrong with this information. It's just that I haven't found out anything about the madam's background." The Great Emperor said, "Then continue to investigate. In my western wasteland, there are no secrets that can truly hide from my eyes." "Yes, Your Majesty." The sky-bearing monarch bowed. Without waiting for a reply, he turned and left. He thought of Baisu, who was currently beside Marquis Zhongwu. He frowned, a bit of worry in his eyes. Although His Majesty had high hopes for Marquis Zhongwu, he had been worried and distrustful of him several times. His Majesty was suspicious, and this was something the sky-bearing monarch already knew. But when it came to Marquis Zhongwu Ningqin, this was infinitely magnified. He always felt that there was something hidden within, but this didn't affect the sky-bearing monarch's general judgment. His Majesty wasn't close to Marquis Zhongwu in the depths of his heart. Before the world-breaking command was completed, perhaps His Majesty would continue to favor him. But once this matter was completed, Marquis Zhongwu Qin would absolutely be in trouble. It seemed that arranging for Bai Su to be close to Marquis Zhongwu was a bit rash, but His Majesty clearly knew this, and yet he didn't stop it. In the future, if something happened to Marquis Zhongwu, how could Bai Su, who had a close relationship with him, stay out of it? Thinking of this, the sky-bearing monarch took a deep breath. He still felt a chill in his heart. As he walked down the long road of the Li Palace, his footsteps became increasingly heavy. In the study, the great emperor was expressionless. After a moment of silence, he flicked his sleeves, and this small world was isolated from the outside world. It wasn't just the great emperor's own cultivation, but also the circulation of the palace's aura with a single thought. Even an emperor realm cultivator wouldn't be able to probe this place. He turned around and sat down. He didn't move at all, but the space in front of him violently shook and darkness gradually appeared. It was pitch black and deathly silent. Just looking at him caused one to feel a chill from the bottom of their hearts. The great emperor frowned slightly and flicked his finger. Suddenly, there was light in the darkness. The extinguished torch on the wall was reignited. The flames illuminated the darkness, but they could not dispel the chill. The figure that was chained slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were crimson, as if they contained two abysses of blood. The corners of his mouth curled up. His long hair draped over his shoulders, revealing only half of his handsome and pale face. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty, my dear father, you've come again. It seems that your Majesty has listened to everything I've said to you." Oomph. The great emperor snorted angrily. The chains that were chaining the figure erupted with lightning at the same time. The terrifying power of lightning struck the person's body like 10,000 swords piercing through his heart. His body tensed up, and he raised his head to let out a miserable scream. His long hair turned to ash in the blink of an eye, revealing a familiar face. Li Siji, third emperor. According to the agreement made by the ancestors, his full name should be Li Siji, but it was too long. The great emperor had personally ordered to erase the word Zhou from his name when he was still a minor. But this didn't mean that the great emperor was dissatisfied. He had always been very satisfied with the third prince who opposed him. Whether it was aptitude, temperament, or skill, the third prince was worthy of cultivation. He was the best candidate to take over the empire if things went wrong. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he had high hopes for the third prince. But now, he had ended up in such a state. He was neither human nor ghost, and even he himself wasn't sure who he was. He had become a complete madman. The lightning gradually faded. Li Siji gasped for breath. But at this time, he was laughing. He was laughing so carefree that he was gasping for breath. "Your Majesty, if you don't wish to see me, then it's fine if you don't come. In any case, with the stone gate sealed, your son will never be able to leave. No one will know that such a shocking scandal has occurred in the imperial clan of the Zhou dynasty. It will not damage your Majesty's reputation and prestige." "Shut up," the great emperor shouted. He leaned forward and looked into those crimson eyes. "Today, I will ask you one more time, regarding the golden General Ning Qin." Halfway through his words, he was interrupted by laughter. Li Siji had a strange expression, and his lips curled up in a mocking smile. "Your Majesty, in truth, you know this the best. Since you came here and wasted your time with a sinful person like me, you have already expressed the attitude in your heart. You are the great emperor of the Western Wasteland, one of the most powerful people in the world. Why can't you face your heart? Why do you always find excuses for yourself?" Without any concealment, he tore apart the hypocrisy and concealment of this great emperor. The great emperor's eyes were cold. Lightning appeared once more, drilling out from the chains and wildly pouring into Li Siji's body. He screamed in pain as his body was covered in lightning. The spatial shaking was restored. The projection of the great emperor dispersed. The figure that struggled and screamed beneath the lightning suddenly calmed down. Li Siji looked up. His twisted face revealed a strange smile. Then he opened his mouth and ruthlessly swallowed. All of the raging lightning power let out a mournful wail before shattering inch by inch and being swallowed into his stomach. The imprisoned area was restored to tranquility. Li Siji looked at the burning torches on the stone walls. The flames rapidly dimmed, and then, with a puff, they were extinguished. This place fell into endless darkness once more. Faint traces of coldness were released from within. Or, to be more precise, it was slowly becoming deeper and thicker. Li Gu pushed open the door. His expression was calm, and his aura was steady and calm. There was no trace of his sword heart wavering from yesterday. He took a deep breath and unsheathed his sword. He pointed it towards the skies, facing the 9 suns above the celestial pole. This was an extremely profound tempering technique. It seemed as if he didn't use a single sword strike, but during this process, he was constantly tempering his own sword heart. Bit by bit, he was tempering the sword in his hand, constantly improving its quality. On the eaves, Li Ruhua said in a soft voice, "It looks like you had a good rest last night. Then, I can rest assured." As she spoke, her eyes fell on the window of Li Ji's room. She could faintly see a woman looking at her makeup in the mirror. Li Gu lightly said, "You don't need to worry about what happens in the room. I don't care, but you'd better hide her aura. The Western Wasteland is currently hunting her down. Don't cause any problems for the person in your room." The door opened from the inside, and the 9-tailed monster fox, Su Yin, walked out. Her expression was cold, and her temperament extraordinary. She bowed respectfully and said, "Fairy maiden, please rest assured. I am willing to serve in your bed. I only hope that I can borrow the sword of Sword Immortal to hide my tracks and safely leave the imperial capital. I will absolutely not cause any trouble for you." She spoke straightforwardly. Li Ruhua glanced at her. "That's for the best." She turned and jumped down. Her figure disappeared. Su Yin frowned. She took 2 steps forwards. "Sir, I've troubled you." "It's fine." Li Gu sheathed his sword. He looked at the 9-tailed fox and said, "But remember, Li Ruhua's status in the clan is above mine. You had best not come into conflict with her in the future." Su Yin bowed. "Yes. Return to your room. Don't casually walk around. When I leave the imperial capital, I will naturally bring you out of this cage." Residential residence. Old Master Jing was eating breakfast at the same old place outside the mansion. There were steamed buns and tea that hadn't changed for many years. As he was happily eating and drinking, his lips curled up in a mocking smile. She had to say that some monsters really did like to court death. Of all the things they could do, they just had to change into her appearance to seduce others. What do you mean by the fox race being intelligent? In his opinion, they were just a bunch of clever fools that harmed others and themselves. An honest-looking and smiling boss came over and poured a spoonful of tea. "Old Master, the ingredients for these steamed buns have been improved. There's a hint of spiciness to them. What do you think?" Old Master Jing gave him a thumbs up. "Not bad. Not bad. The taste is wonderful." The boss's smile became even brighter. He was clumsy and didn't know what to say. He rubbed his apron, hesitation on his face. A neighbor who had been here for many years laughed and joked. "Boss, don't tell me you want to take the initiative to send your own daughter to be old Master Jing's concubine?" Let me tell you, some people may look good on the outside, but they're actually very old and may not be of any use. We can't ruin the life of our little girl. If you really have such thoughts, my son is quite good. How about we take advantage of him?" The boss smiled and waved his hands again and again. No. Of course, if old master is willing, I will definitely agree. As for your young master, my little girl is vulgar and unworthy of him." A customer helplessly scolded. "You old man, you are usually clumsy, but now that you refuse, you are quite flexible." Everyone burst into laughter and jeered at him. The servant girl working at the stall was so embarrassed that her face turned red. Old Master Jing exchanged a few words with them. Although he didn't take advantage of them, he still felt refreshed. This was what life should be like. He waved his hand, indicating that he didn't want to lower himself to their level. Then, he glanced at the boss. What are you standing there for? Go do what you need to do. The boss understood. He let out a sigh of relief and turned around with a smile. That day, he had actually entered the mansion. The housekeeper was his friend, so it wasn't a problem for him to borrow a toilet. But the old master didn't allow him to show himself. The boss felt wronged. He felt that this little fox deserved to die for being so presumptuous in front of the old master. He was old and didn't have many years left to live. He always wanted to repay the old master's kindness before he died. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to pass away in peace. Since the old master didn't need him to do anything, then he would wait a little longer. Chapter 1589. Later Ye Family. Although the storm in the imperial capital had temporarily come to an end due to the urgent military reports from the eastern, northern, and southern border armies, the courtyard was still cold and desolate. No one wanted to be remembered by His Majesty in the imperial palace at this time. Moreover, one of them was destined to rise in power in the future, the loyal Martial Marquis, Ning Qin. Yi Gui entered the tiger fighting hall once more. He respectfully bowed to Yi Bohu and then sat down in his seat, not saying a single word. Since the marshal had asked him to come, he must have made arrangements. All he needed to do was wait. A trace of admiration flashed through Yi Bohu's eyes. He pondered for a moment and said, Yi Gui, you're one of the smartest people in my Yi clan's younger generation. If you're willing, I can give you another chance to choose. He paused for a moment. In fact, I might even let you take over the position of family head in the future, but this is not an absolute promise. I'm only agreeing to give you a chance. But this in itself was already a sign of great importance. Those who were familiar with Yi Bohu's temperament knew that this was the greatest praise and recognition he could give to someone. Yi Gui's expression remained calm. He didn't speak, only shaking his head. Yi Bohu's expression was calm. He didn't reveal any disappointment, nor did he want to continue persuading Yi Gui. He lifted a hand and knocked on the table. Since you've already made up your mind, I will use you as a chess piece. Yi Gui cupped his hands together. I await the marshal's instructions. There will surely be a storm between the Wutong County's Li family and the loyal Martial Marquis, Ning Qin. I want you to act as my driver. Yi Bohu glanced at him, his voice becoming increasingly cold. Remember, we have already reached an agreement with His Majesty that we will not act within the imperial capital. So, no matter what, this matter cannot have anything to do with us. Marshal, rest assured. Yi Gui stood up and walked down the hall. He knelt down and bowed. Farewell, Marshal. He kowtowed, stood up, and left. Within the tiger fighting hall, there was a light sigh. But this emotion was quickly suppressed. Yi Gui had wholeheartedly sought death. He had lived all this time for this day. He had sought benevolence and died a worthy death. A serious look appeared in Yi Bohu's eyes. He also wanted to know what kind of secret that little girl from the devil sect was hiding. In the imperial palace, the suspicious emperor chose to stand by and watch without worrying that the chess pieces in his hands would die. In addition, although His Majesty was suspicious, he had always been a man of great talent and bold vision. He was the true ruler of the world. Anyone who passed the test will be trusted for a period of time. Even if there was a test, it would be a matter for the future. After passing the test, he would be favored even more. Otherwise, he would be reduced to dust. For example, in Guanhai City, that idiot Qin Yuanshan. Thus, Yi Bohu couldn't figure out why His Majesty would repeatedly probe Golden General Ning Qin. There had to be a problem. Yi Bohu couldn't help but feel a little strange. Even if the person the Yi family wanted to kill didn't die now, he would definitely die in the future. Unfortunately, time waits for no man. The Yi family could not wait for that time. Although there were 108 main cities in the capital of the Western Desolate Continent that were connected to each other, it was not easy for anyone to enter. Although one's background was only one of the factors, it was the most important. Those with unknown backgrounds simply had no chance of stepping into the main city's transmission array. This was an extremely strict examination. It was because of this that Taisien had no choice but to borrow several sets of clothes when he entered the Western Wasteland. One of those clothes was the unlucky Li Sangzhou. To say that he was unlucky was true. If Taisien wanted to enter the Western Wasteland, he had many ways to do so. But because of the assassination of Marquis Zhongwu, the capital region's transmission array was under martial law. He didn't dare to delay any further. He had heard that there were Wudong Commandery's Li family juniors in Lunar Advent Hall, so everything that happened afterwards was a matter of course. The Wudong Commandery's Li family's reputation was certainly useful. It wouldn't be difficult for them to enter and leave the imperial capital. As for killing the Li clan's disciples, there would definitely be trouble. Iron Thread, who was as simple as putting on and taking off clothes, had nothing to fear. Not to mention, his roots had already been destroyed. The Great, which directly interfered with the Heaven's secrets. But only at this moment, when he returned to the Western Wasteland, did Taisien realize what a huge mistake he had made. No wonder the Great, which said that if something really happened, he would kill him personally to atone for his sins. For a moment, the face of the body that Taisien had borrowed was pale, and he was sweating profusely. It's over, it's over. He now truly believed that the Great, which was serious. He wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Taisien raised his head and looked at the back of the figure in front of him. He cried miserably, "Lord, I didn't do it on purpose. You must save me." The white robe covered his entire body, revealing only a pair of eyes. Now, he was extremely calm, without the slightest ripple. If he can save me, naturally nothing will happen. Otherwise, even if the Li family doesn't kill him, he will die in my hands. 2 days later, Taisien, who had borrowed another set of clothes, smoothly stepped into the transmission array with a white robe and a strange look on his face. Coincidentally, it was Guanhai City again. This place, I always feel that it's against my 5 elements. Could it be that something will happen? As he muttered, the transmission array lit up and the 2 figures disappeared. Zhongwu Marquis Manor. Little Meat opened her eyes. They were calm. They had finally arrived. She took a step forward and her figure disappeared. When she reappeared, she was already in the capital region. And this sort of super long distance, crossing through space, wasn't detected by the Western Wasteland Imperial Capital's Grand Array at all. From this, one could imagine how profound it was. Little Meat stood on the official road leading to the Imperial Capital. Everyone was hurrying to and fro, but none of them saw her. Even if some people bumped into her, it only flashed by. It was as if the 2 of them seemed to be in the same place, but in reality, they weren't even in the same world. Little Meat was expressionless. She lowered her head and flicked her nails. "Come out. I've been watching for a while. Tell me what you discovered." In front of her, space trembled and 2 figures appeared. Tiexian's face paled and his mouth tasted bitter. He thought that his mouth was asking for too much. Why did he have to spout nonsense? He hurriedly took 2 steps forward and fell to his knees. "Madam, please spare me. This wasn't my idea. You should know that I didn't have the guts." "Yes, that's right. It was the one behind me. She was the one who said that she wanted to take a look. I didn't want to, but I didn't dare to resist. I wailed in my heart, but my mouth could only beg for mercy. I couldn't say another word, because the difference between the 2 people in front and behind him was that they could kill him with a glare or kill him with a sword. No one could afford to provoke them. Little Meat glanced at him. Then her eyes fell on the white robe. A trace of admiration flashed in her eyes. "Your sword cultivation is not bad. I have a sword technique with me. Do you want to try it?" There was a moment of silence under the white robe. "Okay." Little Meat snapped her fingers. Space twisted, and the 3 of them disappeared at the same time. Another 2 days passed. Lord Min was in his room, hugging his concubine and kissing her. Suddenly, his eyes flashed. He sighed and patted her plump chest. "Come down. I still have something to do." The concubine nodded obediently, but her eyes couldn't help but reveal a hint of bitterness. Lord Min pinched her cheeks. "Hee, there's nothing I can do, but I have to do things quickly so that I can continue to live a peaceful life." He stood up and left. Leaving the concubine's courtyard, Lord Min walked towards Min Xiangtai's residence. On the way, he met several maids, and most of them flirted with him. Unfortunately, the maids in the mansion were already familiar with their master's temperament. They didn't panic because of this, and most of them responded with flirtatious looks, causing Lord Min to sigh and sigh. He felt that public morals were degenerating day by day. Little girls nowadays were becoming more and more daring. It was only now that he was old enough to cultivate his moral character. If it was when he was young, he would have carried these little girls to bed and let them have a taste of what it meant to thrust out a spear like a dragon and overturn rivers and seas. Because of a serious illness, the old scholar in chess servant had been sent home by the master and given a large sum of money. The servants in the mansion were all envious. So, there was no one in the study today. Lord Min walked to the bookshelf and reached out to take down the heaven-shrouding book. Looking at its shabby surface, he revealed a helpless smile. As the saying goes, one can survive a disaster caused by the heavens, but one cannot survive a disaster caused by oneself. Fox, you brought about your own destruction, so don't blame me. He walked to the charcoal stove that was used to boil tea. He casually took out a match and blew on it. Soon, flames began to dance. Looking at the heaven-shrouding book in his hand, Lord Min expressionlessly tossed it in. Pooh! The flames immediately rose 3 feet high, swallowing the heaven-shrouding book and gradually burning it to ashes. Lord Min's eyes revealed a bit of emotion. To kill a 9-tailed monster fox, I lost the supreme treasure of the monster race. Consider this the price for violating my oath. So, this matter is now written off. After this, karma cannot be traced back to me. He spoke to himself, but with just a few words, he had sealed the coffin of this matter and truly severed the entanglement of karma. Mysterious and mysterious, the great Tao unfathomable. Soon, the complacent expression on Lord Min's face turned into a bitter smile. He was able to separate himself from this matter. But that person in the loyal Marshal Marquis manner would not forget him. As long as that person was here, he could not truly stay out of this matter. He could only hope that the madam would keep her word, otherwise it would truly be troublesome. Imperial Capital, Li Residence. In Li Ji's room, the demon fox Su Yin was sitting behind a desk, flipping through a book. Suddenly, her complexion changed. Without warning, her heart palpitated. The intuition of a great monster told her that a calamity was about to befall her. It was as if the heavens and earth were collapsing and all things were falling. She was trapped within, struggling with all her might to no avail. Ligu, save me. Before her scream fell, flames appeared out of thin air, wrapping around Su Yin. But what was strange was that these flames were like shadows, not leaking any heat. Even the book next to her was within range of the flames and was unharmed. But in the end, it was not a shadow. At least to the demon fox Su Yin, its might surpassed all flames in the world. This was because the flames came from a sky-shrouding book. It was the absolute demonic fire that was ignited at the cost of its own destruction. When it was in perfect condition, the sky-shrouding book was a sacred item of the monster race. It could help any monster in the world conceal their own aura and hide from the heavenly secrets. But once it was ignited, the flames formed could also burn any great monster in the world to death. Their body and soul would be completely destroyed. This was the origin of the absolute demonic fire. In the flames, the cold fairy in a white dress rotted in the blink of an eye, turning into a wretched appearance like that of an evil ghost. Then, she could not even maintain her human form and revealed her true form of the 9-tailed demon fox. With a roll, the earth shook and the small courtyard Ligu was smashed into pieces. The absolute demonic fire was like maggots in one's bones. Once infected, it would not rest until one died. Even if the 9-tailed demon fox revealed its true form and expanded its body by a few hundred times, it was still burned by the flames and could not break free. The 9-tailed demon fox's huge body in the flames instantly attracted a lot of attention. For example, during this period of time, because of the continuous changes, the Imperial Capital garrison was under great pressure. There was also the little eunuch in the imperial palace who had received orders from the emperor to hunt down the nine-tailed demon fox. He walked out of the shadows and looked up at the depths of the Lee family's residence. He saw the nine-tailed demon fox that had suddenly appeared and the absolute demonic fire that shot into the sky. His eyes revealed a serious expression. The nine-tailed demon fox was actually hiding in the Lee family. Could it be that His Majesty's previous guess was true? No, all of this was too much of a coincidence. Also, where did the nine-tailed demon fox get its absolute demonic fire? The Lee family? They obviously would not destroy an extremely precious sacred item of the monster race just to do something for the Western Wasteland Empire. After all, such an item, even in the divine continent of the Central Wasteland, would be coveted by everyone. It was qualified to take it out to make a big deal with the monster race. That was, someone had killed the nine-tailed demon fox and forced it to reveal itself. This plan was really big. There must be a plot behind it. It did not seem like it was only targeted at Wudong County. Could it be that it was targeting the Lee family of the Central Wasteland? Chapter 1590. The little eunuch sensed something and turned around to salute respectfully, "Your Majesty." The Western Wilderness Emperor's expression was indifferent as he sneered. "I didn't expect the imperial capital to be so lively. Don't show yourself, just stay here and watch the show with me." His eyes grew colder as he looked at the Lee residence, at the absolute demon flame that soared into the sky, and at the nine-tailed demon fox that was howling in pain and struggling within. "Yes, Your Majesty." The eunuch took a step back, half of his body hidden in the shadows. He looked at His Majesty's back and could feel the cold, murderous intent. His Majesty was really angry. There must be an explanation for what happened today. The nine-tailed fox, the Lee clan, and the person who summoned the demon-extinguishing flame. None of them would be able to escape. The imperial garrison, who had been pressed down and slapped violently, had lost all face. They surrounded the Lee residence as quickly as possible, not allowing anyone to enter or leave. The doors to the courtyard opened, and Li Ziqing stepped out. He said in a deep voice, "This old man will give His Majesty an explanation for this matter. None of you are allowed to take a single step in." Amidst the hesitation, the crowd suddenly parted to two sides. The sky-bearing monarch walked over with an expressionless face. "Ancestor Li, this is the imperial capital." As the atmosphere outside the mansion grew tense, the nine-tailed monster fox within the absolute demonic flame could clearly feel the aura of death approaching. Large patches of its snow-white fur were charred and falling off, revealing sinister rotting flesh. Its howls became even more mournful. Li Gu, save me, and you promised to take me away from the Western Wilderness imperial capital." Not far away, Li Gu stood with his sword in his arms. His eyebrows twitched, but he soon calmed down. Li Ruhua's face was expressionless, and her eyes were cold. "I've reminded you not to complicate matters," Li Gu said indifferently. "Under the absolute demonic flame, the nine-tailed demon fox will die. West Wilderness knows our identities and will not force us. At most, let the Li family of Wudong County pay some price, and then the matter will be over." Li Ruhua glanced at him. That better be the case. But now, there was a red spot on her palm that was constantly heating up. This made her feel uneasy. Of course, she knew about the existence of the heaven-shrouding book. The other party was willing to pay any price, so how could he let them pass so easily? Today's matter was probably targeted at the two of them from the very beginning. Li Ruhua seemed to have thought of something, and her expression became even more solemn. At this moment, the nine-tailed demonic fox, who was being burned by the absolute demonic flame, also realized Li Ji's attitude. Hatred appeared in its eyes. If the Li family of the Middle Wilderness intervened, perhaps they would have a chance to live. Otherwise, what awaited them today was death. Li Gu, the nine-tailed demon fox, howled mournfully. She could not understand why that old thing would suddenly turn hostile and attack. But that was not important. If she didn't want to die, she could only drag more people into the mire. They would either die with her or live with her. Everyone knew that fox demons were the most sentimental. They used their own emotional tribulations as an opportunity to cultivate and break through. But other than that, once a fox demon falls in love, it will form a knot in the heart, known as the heart. This knot of heart consumed a fox demon's cultivation. The higher one's realm was, the greater the losses. So, Liga never imagined that the nine-tailed demon fox, Su Yin, would unhesitatingly damage her own realm on the first night and secretly create a knot of heart between the two of them. As the saying goes, husband and wife form a knot of heart. This could be regarded as a gift that a fox demon gave to its loved one. It was greatly beneficial to one's cultivation. So Li Ji's unstable sword heart symptoms naturally disappeared after a night. But if love gave birth to hate, then the knot of heart would become a shackle that bound the two together. They would live and die together. Who? An invisible flame suddenly appeared. It wrapped around Li Ge. He looked up, shock and anger in his eyes. Shua! He unsheathed his sword. Boundless sword intent broke out from his body, covering his entire body and temporarily isolating the absolute demonic flame outside. But his complexion still paled at a speed visible to the naked eye. Beads of sweat covered his forehead. Li Ge could use the sword in his hand to temporarily block the absolute demonic flame, but he couldn't cut through it. The burning pain from the nine-tailed demon fox passed through his body and directly affected his soul. Concentric knot. Li Ruhua's complexion changed. She looked at Li Ge. After a moment of shock, there was a deep disappointment. The future sword immortal of the Li family, someone with unparalleled talent, was only at this level. He had been tricked by a mere fox demon and didn't even know it. How laughable. But she couldn't just watch as Li Ge was destroyed. Otherwise, even if she had ample reason, she would lose face in the clan. To become a leader, protecting incompetent clansmen was one of the most important tests. The nine-tailed demon fox writhed in pain. Her 9 limbs were burned to a bloody pulp. Her incomparably large tails wildly swept around, creating thunderous explosions. The luxurious and exquisitely family residence was instantly destroyed, turning into a complete mess. Countless pieces of broken wood and rubble were wrapped in a terrifying power. They flew through the air at an astonishing speed, crashing in all directions. Foxes were intelligent, but they weren't as stupid as Lord Min said. Otherwise, the nine-tailed demon fox, Su Yin, wouldn't have sacrificed her own cultivation and created a knot of heart to guard against any mishaps. Now, what she needed to do was to make a bigger commotion and alarm the Western Wilderness's Great Formation. If she died, Li Ge would die as well. She would force the Li family of the Middle Wilderness to act and save their lives. Rumble. A deep rumble came from the sky. A whirlpool appeared out of nowhere, covering the entire Li family's residence within a radius of 100 miles. This was the Western Wilderness's Fate Great Formation. It was a terrifying formation that could withstand the nether whirlpool of an Emperor Realm expert. It was so large that even the capital region was covered within. What appeared now was only a small portion of the formation's power, perhaps less than 1%. But even so, the destructive aura released by the whirlpool still froze time and space where the Li family was. Li Zicheng took a deep breath. He moved into the air and looked up at the whirlpool. My Wudong County's Li family is here. Who dares? The sky-bearing king was expressionless. Ancestrally, it was your Li family who first violated the contract between the Li family and the Emperor clan. Move, or I will use the crime of threatening the imperial capital and activate more of the whirlpool's power to kill you as well. Li Zicheng was enraged. His peak sovereign cultivation broke out of his body. The shadow of an ancient parasol tree appeared above his head. His already powerful aura rose even further. The sky-bearing king narrowed his eyes, his expression cold. He didn't wait for his majesty's order to stop. Making a move against the Li family's ancestor would be troublesome. But as his majesty's confidant, the sky-bearing king had no choice. Even if he knew there would be endless trouble, he could only grit his teeth and endure. He couldn't show the slightest bit of hesitation or resistance. His Majesty observed people in the details. Otherwise, even if he killed the Lee family's ancestor today, he wouldn't be of any merit in His Majesty's heart. He might even be alienated and abandoned. In the end, he would be thrown out as a scapegoat. Taking a deep breath, the sky-bearing king raised his hand. A token appeared in his palm. It was the size of a palm and was engraved on its surface. The image of a whirlpool was vivid and lifelike, as if it was spinning slowly. Rumble. As the token appeared, the whirlpool above the Lee family's residence expanded crazily. In the blink of an eye, it was 1,000 miles wide. The core area became as black as ink. It was like a giant mouth that could swallow everything in the world. Li Zicheng's face was ashen. He couldn't help but reveal shock in the depths of his eyes. Firstly, the whirlpool formation in the western wasteland imperial capital was stronger than he had imagined. Secondly, the Western Wasteland Empire really had the intention to kill him. But now, the one dragged down by the nine-tailed demon fox was the little ancestor of the Central Wasteland Divine Prefecture, Li Ge. If he died, even if Li Zicheng had 100 mouths, he wouldn't be able to get away with it. Once he was blamed by the main family, his future path towards the Great Tao would be completely severed. With the current situation, he couldn't back down. Li Zicheng, come back. A calm voice suddenly rang out. Looking at Li Ruhua, flying in the air, Li Zicheng relaxed a little. He respectfully called her little ancestor and flew behind her with his head lowered. At this moment, countless eyes gathered on Li Ruhua's body. Looking at her beautiful and dignified face, there was shock in their eyes. Li Ruhua looked at the sky-bearing king, whose expression was as cold as stone. Then, she looked up at the whirlpool formation in the sky. Central Wasteland Li family's third generation, disciple Li Ruhua greets your majesty. After a moment of silence, the great emperor's calm voice rang out from the whirlpool. The Central Wasteland Li family's fame has spread far and wide. I have admired you for a long time, but I never thought I would see you today. Li Ruhua bowed. Your majesty praises me too much. I came to the imperial capital with no intention of harming the Western Wasteland. I ask that your majesty save my family member. The whirlpool formation was calm. It was clear that the great emperor wasn't satisfied with her explanation. Li Ruhua took a deep breath. We will give your majesty an explanation for this matter. Also, the Li family owes the Western Wasteland a favor. But within the whirlpool formation, the great emperor's voice rang out. In the next moment, a boundless aura gathered. Shua, like a bolt of lightning, it pierced through the void and crashed into the body of the nine-tailed demon fox. It emitted a cry of despair. Its massive monster body was split in half, and its eyes dimmed as all signs of life were severed. Rumble, rumble. The monster body fell to the ground, instantly destroying half of the Li residence. With Li Ruhua's boundary, she could only barely catch a glimpse of that flash of light, a sword that suppressed the destiny of the imperial capital. It had been baptized by incense, nurtured, and was the true divine artifact of the Western Wasteland Empire. Only like this could it slay the nine-tailed demon fox, sever the knot of love, and save Li Ji's life. But it was only enough to save his life. Puff, spitting out a mouthful of blood, Li Ge staggered. Blood seeped out from every orifice of his head. The sword in his hand had been broken in half. The cut was incomparably smooth, exactly the same as the nine-tailed demon fox's. The man was alive, and the sword was broken, to use a sword cultivator's sword to exchange for his life. Although he was indeed alive, from a certain perspective, he was also dead. Li Zicheng's complexion paled. Deep in his eyes, there was a trace of fear. He never thought that after the two little ancestors had revealed their identities, the Western Wasteland Great Emperor would still dare to deal such a heavy blow. The demon fox is dead. Li Ge is alive. I am a man of my word. Now, I will wait for your Li family to give me an explanation. Above his head, The terrifying whirlpool formation that covered 1,000 miles slowly vanished from sight. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.